At 3:47 in the morning, Celine Vale watched the man she loved marry another woman on live television and realized she had been nothing but collateral damage in someone else's empire. Rain hammered the safe house windows. Her packed bag sat by the door like a tombstone. Roman Duvall had promised her midnight. He'd promised her freedom. Instead, she got a wire transfer and a text telling her to disappear. 6 months of whispered confessions in parked cars, stolen kisses on private rooftops, promises made in the dark, all of it crushed beneath cathedral lights, and a strategic alliance between crime families. But heartbreak has a way of burning clean, and what rose from those ashes wasn't the fragile nurse who once believed love could save monsters. It was something colder, something dangerous. The trauma bay at Boston Metro smelled like antiseptic, and bad decisions at 2 in the morning. Celine Vale had been on her feet for 9 hours straight, stitching up knife wounds and setting broken bones, while the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects. Her scrubs were speckled with someone else's blood. Her coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago. Her back ached in that deep grinding way that meant she'd be feeling it for days. She was washing her hands in the industrial sink when the doors exploded open. 2 men in expensive suits half carried, half dragged a third man between them. The injured one wore a white dress shirt soaked black with blood. His face was pale, jaw clenched so tight Celine could see the muscles jumping beneath his skin. He moved like someone who'd been hurt before, controlled, deliberate, refusing to show weakness even while bleeding out. "Gunshot wound," one of the suits said. No emotion, like he was ordering takeout. Celine's attending physician, Dr. Reeves, took one look at the trio and stepped back. "We need to call the police." "No police." The injured man's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He looked directly at Celine. His eyes were dark, almost black, and completely steady despite the blood loss. "Just fix it." Dr. Reeves hesitated. Standard protocol demanded they report gunshot wounds. But something about the way the 2 suits positioned themselves, hands inside their jackets, expressions flat and dangerous, made protocol feel suddenly negotiable. "I'll handle it," Celine heard herself say. She didn't know why. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way the injured man looked at her, not pleading, not threatening, just waiting. Like he already knew she'd help him and was simply giving her time to catch up. Dr. Reeves shot her a warning look, but didn't argue. The suits deposited their cargo on the exam table and melted back toward the doors. One of them paused. "You got 30 minutes, he told Celine. "Then we're gone, with or without him." The doors swung shut. Celine was alone with a stranger who might die on her table. She moved on autopilot, years of training overriding the screaming voice in her head that said this was monumentally stupid. She cut away a shirt. The bullet had entered just below his left collarbone, missing the subclavian artery by maybe half an inch. Lucky. Unlucky enough to get shot. Lucky enough that it hadn't killed him immediately. "I need to give you something for the pain," she said. Reaching for the medication cart, his hand shot out, fingers closing around her wrist. Not hard, just firm enough to stop her. No anesthesia. "That's insane. I have to. I've been shot before." His voice was steady, almost conversational. "I need to stay conscious. Just do it." Celine stared at him. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd initially thought. Maybe early 30s. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair pushed back from his forehead, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. Handsome in that severe, carved from marble way that made people nervous. "I could hit a nerve," she said. "You could go into shock, then work fast." Something in his tone made it clear this wasn't up for debate. Celine pulled her wrist free and grabbed her instruments. Fine, if he wanted to be a martyr, that was his funeral. Except she was the one who'd have to explain the corpse. She irrigated the wound, her hands steady even as her pulse hammered. The bullet was lodged against bone, visible through the torn muscle tissue. She'd have to extract it carefully, avoid fragmenting it, minimize the damage. The man didn't make a sound. Not when she inserted the forceps. Not when she carefully worked the bullet free. Not when she began to debride the damaged tissue. He just stared at the ceiling, breathing slow and controlled like he was somewhere else entirely. "What's your name?" Celine asked, partly to distract him. Partly because she needed to distract herself from the absolute insanity of what she was doing. "Does it matter?" "I'm elbow deep in your chest cavity," Seems like we should at least be on a first-name basis. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Roman, Celine, Greek goddess of the moon. He said it without inflection, just stating a fact. Your parents were optimistic. My mother read too much mythology. She dropped the bullet into a metal dish with a sharp clink. Your parents clearly had a thing for empire builders. They had a thing for legacy. His jaw tightened. Didn't ask me what I wanted. Celine started suturing. The wound was clean now, the bleeding controlled. She worked in silence for several minutes, her needle pulling silk thread through skin with practiced precision. You do this often, she asked. Get shot. Define often. More than 0 times. Then yes, occupational hazard. Something like that. She tied off the last suture and stepped back. You need antibiotics. Real ones. Not whatever street pharmacists you people use. And you need to keep this clean and dry for at least. I know the drill, he interrupted. Roman sat up carefully, testing his range of motion. His face was still pale, but his eyes were sharp, alert. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't die in the next 48 hours and ruin my night. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Celine felt something shift in the air between them. Recognition, maybe. Or acknowledgement. Like they were both people who'd seen too much and were tired of pretending otherwise. One of the suits appeared in the doorway. Time. Roman slid off the table. He moved stiffly but under his own power. Celine watched him shrug into the ruined dress shirt, dark blood making abstract patterns across the white fabric. At the door, he paused. You didn't ask what happened. Would you have told me the truth? No. Then why waste the question? That almost smile flickered across his face again. Then he was gone, disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness like he'd never existed at all. Celine stood in the empty trauma bay surrounded by bloody gauze and used instruments and wondered what she'd just gotten herself into. The first bouquet arrived 3 days later. White roses, 24 of them. No card. Celine's coworker Ivy raised an eyebrow when the delivery guy showed up at the nurse's station. Someone's got an admirer, Ivy said, leaning over to sniff the blooms. Secret boyfriend you haven't mentioned. Probably a grateful patient. Celine didn't mention that most grateful patients sent chocolate or gift cards to coffee shops, not roses that probably cost more than her rent. The second bouquet arrived the next week. White roses again. Still no card. The third week it wasn't flowers. It was a bottle of wine. Chateau Margaux, 2015. Celine didn't know much about wine, but she knew enough to recognize that this bottle cost more than her monthly student loan payment. She turned it over in her hands, looking for some clue, some explanation. There, on the back label, someone had written an elegant script with steady hands and poor judgment. The letter R. Oh, you're in trouble, Ivy said, reading over her shoulder. That's either the most romantic thing I've ever seen or the opening move in a psychological thriller. Could be both, Celine muttered. She should have thrown it away, should have reported the gifts to hospital administration, should have done literally anything except what she actually did, which was take the wine home and drink half the bottle while sitting on her fire escape, watching the city lights blur together. The next week, Roman showed up in person. Celine was leaving the hospital after a double shift, exhausted and hungry, and looking forward to nothing more exciting than leftover Thai food and bad television. She pushed through the employee exit into the parking garage and found him leaning against a black sedan that probably cost more than she'd earned in 5 years. He looked different. The dress shirt and blood were gone, replaced by dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look almost normal. Almost. Except for the way he held himself. Coiled, watchful. Like violence was always an option he kept in his back pocket. You're stalking me now. Celine stopped about 10 feet away. Keys gripped tight between her fingers. Not that they do much good against someone like him. I'm thanking you. He gestured to his shoulder. Healed, clean, no infection, you're good at your job. That's what medical school is for. Most people would have asked questions. Most people aren't trying to survive the night shift in a trauma bay. We see things. We don't see things. It's a very flexible skill set. Roman laughed. The sound was unexpected, rough and genuine, like he'd surprised himself. Have dinner with me. No, why not? Because I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I'm wearing scrubs that smell like someone else's vomit. Also, you got shot by someone. For some reason you won't explain. That's generally considered a red flag. Fair points. He pushed off the car. Coffee, then. There's a diner 2 blocks from here, public place. You can leave whenever you want. Celine knew she should say no, should get in her car and drive away and forget this ever happened. But there was something about the way he looked at her. Not like she was a means to an end, not like she was interchangeable with anyone else, but like she was specifically, individually interesting. Like he actually wanted to know what she'd say next. 1 hour, she heard herself agree. Then I'm gone. Deal. The diner was exactly the kind of place Celine would have picked herself. Worn vinyl booths, flickering fluorescent lights, coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since the Reagan administration. Roman looked wildly out of place, too sharp and expensive for the cracked linoleum and laminated menus. They sat across from each other in a corner booth. Celine ordered coffee and pie. Roman ordered nothing. You're not eating. I'm here for the company, not the cuisine. That's a mistake. The pie is pretty good. He flagged down the waitress to order a slice. When it arrived, he took 1 bite and made a face. You lied. I have low standards. It builds character. That laugh again. Celine found herself wanting to hear it more often. They talked about nothing important. The weather. The best late-night food in Boston. The particular kind of exhaustion that comes from working nights. Roman was surprisingly easy to talk to when he wasn't bleeding on an exam table. He listened like listening actually mattered, asked questions that suggested he remembered her answers. An hour turned into 2. The diner emptied around them. The waitress stopped refilling their coffee and started giving them meaningful looks. I should go, Celine finally said. Early shift tomorrow. Can I see you again? She should have said no, should have recognized this for what it was. A man from a dangerous world pulling her into his orbit. But sitting across from Roman Duvall, watching the way the crappy diner lights caught in his dark eyes, Celine felt something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Maybe, she said. I'll take it. 2 days later, Roman texted her. The number wasn't saved in her phone, but she knew it was him. Rooftop, Ashworth Building, 9 p.m. if you're free. Celine stared at the message. The Ashworth Building was one of those luxury high-rises downtown, all glass and steel and monthly rents that could feed a small country. She had no business being there. She went anyway. The rooftop was transformed. String lights hung between the ventilation units. A table was set up with actual china and silver. The city sprawled below them, a carpet of light stretching to the harbor. Roman stood by the edge, hands in his pockets, looking out over the skyline. This is insane, Celine said. Is that a complaint? It's an observation. She walked to the table, ran her fingers over the crisp white tablecloth. How did you even? I know people, right? The same people who shoot you, presumably. Different people. He pulled out a chair for her. Sit, please. The food was incredible, professionally catered, still hot, probably illegal given the number of health code violations happening on this unlicensed rooftop restaurant. They ate and talked and watched the city breathe below them. Celine learned that Roman hated crowded restaurants, that he'd wanted to be an architect when he was younger, that he read constantly, but never fiction, only history and biography, like he was searching for proof that other people had survived impossible situations. She told him about growing up in a small town in Maine, about her mother dying when she was 16, about choosing emergency medicine because she liked the chaos, the way every shift was different. The fact that you didn't have time to overthink things when someone was coding on the table. You like saving people, Roman observed. I like fixing problems. What if the problem can't be fixed? Celine met his eyes across the table. Then you do what you can and you don't beat yourself up about the rest. Something shifted in his expression, longing maybe, or grief. That sounds nice, he said quietly. Not beating yourself up. You should try it sometime. I wouldn't know where to start. The vulnerability in those words hit her harder than any confession. This was a man who carried weight that wasn't his to carry, who'd been taught that strength meant never putting anything down. Celine reached across the table and took his hand. Roman stared at their joined hands like he'd never seen anything more surprising. What are you doing? He asked. I don't know, Celine admitted. Something stupid, probably. Probably. But he didn't let go. That's how it started. Carefully. In pieces. In stolen moments between Celine's shifts and Roman's mysterious obligations, he never told her what he did. She never asked directly. But the clues accumulated like evidence at a crime scene. The way people moved aside when he entered a room, the deference in their voices, the black SUVs that occasionally appeared outside her apartment building, the fact that he carried a gun the way most people carried their phone, casually, automatically, like it was just another item in his pocket. Celine wasn't stupid. She knew Roman was involved in something illegal, probably something violent. But the man who showed up at her door with takeout and wine, who listened to her complain about hospital bureaucracy, who fell asleep on her couch with his head in her lap while she watched terrible reality television, that man didn't feel dangerous. He felt broken. And Celine had always been drawn to broken things. 2 months in, they were lying in her bed at 3 in the morning. Roman couldn't sleep, he rarely could, and Celine had given up trying. They were tangled together under her cheap cotton sheets, his fingers tracing absent patterns on her bare shoulder. "Tell me something true," she said into the darkness. "I'm here. That's true. Tell me something you've never told anyone else." Roman was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I hate my life." 3 words. Said so simply, they almost didn't sound important. Celine rolled over to face him. "So change it. It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because I'm not just myself. I'm a legacy, an obligation, a piece on a board that's been in place since before I was born." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reciting facts. "My father built an empire. My job is to maintain it. And what you want doesn't matter. What I want has never mattered." Celine pressed her palm against his chest, felt his heart beat steady beneath her hand. "It matters to me," she said. Roman pulled her closer, buried his face in her hair. She felt him shake just once. So briefly, she might have imagined it, and realized with startling clarity that she was holding someone who'd forgotten how to be held. "I can't give you normal," he whispered. "I can't give you safe. I can't even promise you tomorrow. I'm not asking for promises. What are you asking for?" "This. Right now. Just this." So they stayed there, wrapped around each other in the dark, pretending the morning would never come. But mornings always came, and with them, reality. Celine started noticing the surveillance. Black cars that appeared too regularly. Men in suits who watched her apartment from across the street. The feeling of being followed even when she couldn't spot anyone specific. Ivy noticed too. "You need to be careful," she said one afternoon during their break. They were sitting in the hospital cafeteria, picking at mediocre salads and pretending they weren't exhausted. "Whoever this guy is, he's bringing heat. It's fine. Celine, someone followed you to work yesterday. I saw the car. Roman would never hurt me. I'm not worried about Roman hurting you. I'm worried about whoever Roman's running from hurting you to get to him." Celine set down her fork. "What am I supposed to do? Just walk away? Would that be so terrible?" Yes, the word came out harder than she'd intended. Yes, it would. Ivy studied her with worried eyes. "You're in love with him." It wasn't a question. Celine didn't answer. Didn't need to. The truth was written all over her face. "Then you need to make him choose," Ivy said quietly. "Whatever life he's living, whatever he's into, he needs to pick you or pick that. Because you can't have both, not safely." That night, Celine tried to talk to Roman about it. They were in his car, a different one this time, something expensive in German, parked on a quiet street overlooking the harbor. He'd picked her up after her shift, said he wanted to show her something. They'd ended up here, watching container ships move through the dark water like sleeping giants. "We need to talk about what happens next," Celine said. Roman's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" "I mean, people are watching me, following me. I can't keep pretending that's normal. I'll make it stop. That's not the point. The point is that your life and my life don't fit together, and we keep avoiding talking about it. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me the truth. All of it. What you do, who you are, what I'm actually part of here." Roman was silent for a long time. The only sound was the distant horn of a ship coming into port. "My family runs things," he finally said. "Territories, businesses, operations. My father controls the East Coast. When he dies, I take over." "What kind of operations?" "The kind that don't get discussed in polite company. I'm not polite company. I'm the woman you're sleeping with. I deserve honesty." Roman turned to look at her. In the dim light from the dashboard, his face looked carved from stone. If I tell you everything, you'll leave. If you don't tell me, I'll leave anyway. Then we're at an impasse. Frustration burned in Celine's chest. You talk about wanting to escape, but you won't actually do anything about it. You talk about hating your life, but you won't change it. At some point, Roman, you have to decide if you're a prisoner or a coward. The words hung between them like broken glass. Roman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain. Or maybe recognition. What if I can't tell the difference anymore? He asked quietly. Celine reached for his hand. Then let me help you figure it out. For a moment, she thought he might actually do it, might actually choose her over whatever darkness was eating him alive. Then his phone rang. Roman looked at the screen and his entire face changed. The vulnerability disappeared, replaced by something cold and distant. I have to take this, he said. Roman, I'm sorry, I have to go. He dropped her off at her apartment without another word, drove away without looking back. Celine stood on the sidewalk and watched his taillights disappear into the city traffic, feeling like she'd just lost something she'd never actually had in the first place. 3 days later, everything fell apart. Roman showed up at her apartment at midnight. She knew something was wrong the moment she opened the door. He looked wrecked, tie loose, hair disheveled, eyes hollow with something that looked like panic. What happened? She asked. He walked past her into the apartment, started pacing like a caged animal. The families are at war. My father and Marcus Laurent have been playing games for months, testing boundaries, pushing territory. It finally exploded. Marcus wants a truce. Okay, that's good, right? The truce comes with conditions. Something in his tone made Celine's stomach drop. What kind of conditions? Roman stopped pacing, turned to face her. Marriage. Me and Celeste Laurent. Unite the families and end the conflict. The words hit Celine like a physical blow. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Tell them no. I can't. Yes, you can. You're an adult. You have agency. Tell them if I refuse, people die. Not just me, not just my father. Innocent people caught in the crossfire. Civilians. Families. That's not your responsibility. Yes, it is. Roman's voice cracked. That's exactly what it is. I'm responsible for all of it. The territory, the operations, the people who depend on us for protection. If I walk away from this, I'm not just destroying myself. I'm destroying everyone connected to this empire. Celine stared at him, understanding clicking into place with horrible clarity. And I'm not connected to the empire, so I'm expendable. That's not what I mean. Yes, it is. That's exactly what you're saying. Celeste Laurent matters because she's politically valuable. I don't matter because I'm just some nurse you're sleeping with. You matter more than any of them. Roman crossed the room, grabbed her hands desperately. That's why I'm here. I need 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks to figure this out. To find another way. Then we run. Run where? Anywhere. Everywhere. I'll burn it all down if that's what it takes. But I need time. Celine looked at their joined hands, at Roman's face, pleading and desperate, at the future collapsing around them. Promise me, she whispered. Promise me this isn't just another lie you're telling yourself. I swear to you. 2 weeks, then we disappear together. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it physically hurt. So she chose hope over logic, chose love over self-preservation. Okay, she said, 2 weeks. Roman pulled her into his arms, held her like she was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. I love you, he said into her hair. I know I've never said it, but I love you more than I've ever loved anything. I love you too. They stayed like that for hours, wrapped around each other, trying to memorize the feeling of being whole. Neither of them mentioned that 2 weeks might as well be forever when you're standing at the edge of a cliff. The next 14 days were torture. Roman's calls became shorter, his texts more sporadic. The warmth between them cooled to something mechanical and distant, like he was already practicing how to let her go. Celine tried to be patient, tried to trust him, but doubt crept in like poison. She started making plans anyway, just in case. She looked at apartments in Portland, researched clinics that needed nurses, created an escape route for herself, because hoping for the best didn't mean ignoring the worst. On day 12, Roman stopped responding to her messages entirely. On day 13, Ivy grabbed her after shift. You need to see this, she said, shoving her phone toward Celine. It was a society blog. The headline read, Duvall-Laurent wedding confirmed for Saturday. Private ceremony unites two dynasties. Below it was a photo of Roman and Celeste leaving some charity gala together. She was beautiful, elegant, and poised in the way people born into money always were. She looked like she belonged on Roman's arm. Celine looked like someone who'd stumbled into the wrong story. "I'm sorry," Ivy said quietly. Celine handed back the phone. "It's fine. He said he'd handle it." "Celine, he'll handle it." But she heard the desperate edge in her own voice. On day 14, the day Roman had promised they'd run, Celine packed a bag anyway. She'd been given an address. A safe house by the lake, 40 minutes outside the city. Roman said to be there by midnight. She arrived at 8, too anxious to wait any longer. The house was empty, dark. Rain was starting to fall, light and steady, tapping against the windows like fingers. Celine sat on the cracked leather sofa and watched the clock. Midnight came. Roman didn't. At 2 her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Turn on the news." Celine grabbed the remote with shaking hands. The broadcast was live, some kind of society event. And there, standing beneath cathedral lights in a black tailored suit, was Roman Duvall. Next to him stood Celeste Laurent in a white wedding dress. The ceremony was already underway. Celine watched Roman take Celeste's hand, watched him recite vows that should have been meant for someone else, watched him become a man she didn't recognize. The headline scrolled beneath them. Roman Duvall weds Celeste Laurent in secret union of two crime dynasties. Something inside Celine cracked, not her heart, deeper than that. Her phone buzzed again. "I'm sorry. I had no choice. The money I sent will help you disappear. Don't contact me again." Our money, as if their love could be buried beneath a wire transfer, as if she was just another problem to be solved, another loose end to be tied off. Celine sat in the dark safe house, rain pounding harder now, and felt herself transform. The fragile parts of her, the ones that still believed in happy endings, that still thought love could save people, burned away like dead wood. What remained was something colder, clearer. She wasn't going to disappear. She wasn't going to take his money and pretend none of this had happened. She was going to walk straight into Roman Duvall's new life and make him look her in the eye, while he explained why she hadn't been worth fighting for. Celine stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked out into the storm. The wedding reception was being held at the Laurent estate. She had no invitation, no plan, no backup. She had a friend, Luca Reiner, a low-level soldier in the Duvall organization who owed her a life debt from a night 6 months ago when she'd patched up his brother without asking questions. One phone call. That's all it took. "You sure about this?" Luca asked when he picked her up 20 minutes later. Celine stared out the window at the rain-slicked streets. "No," she said, "but I'm doing it anyway." The Laurent estate sat on 15 acres of manicured coastline, all wrought iron gates, and old money arrogance. Luca's car crawled up the long driveway, behind a line of black sedans and luxury vehicles that probably cost more than Celine would make in a decade. Through the rain-streaked windows, she could see the mansion blazing with light. Every window golden, the grounds lit up like a stage set. "Security is going to be insane," Luca said, gripping the steering wheel tight. "The Laurents don't play around, especially not tonight. You got any kind of plan, or are we just winging this?" Celine watched a couple in evening wear dash from their car to the entrance, the woman's dress sparkling under the exterior lights. "You said you could get me in." "I said I could try. There's a difference." He pulled into a spot near the service entrance, killed the engine. "Look, I get it. Guy broke your heart. But walking into a room full of crime bosses and their trigger-happy security to confront him on his wedding night, that's not heartbreak talking. That's suicide. Then stay in the car. Can't do that. You saved my brother's life. I owe you." Luca rubbed his face, looking 10 years older in the dashboard light. "But after tonight, we're square. Deal, deal." They got out into the rain. It was coming down harder now, cold and mean, soaking through Celine's jacket in seconds. She'd worn black jeans, boots, a simple top. Nothing that would stand out. Nothing that screamed scorned lover crashing a wedding reception. Luca led her around the side of the mansion toward a door marked for catering staff. 2 guys in suits stood guard, arms crossed, faces blank. "Reiner," one of them said. "Not friendly. You're supposed to be on rotation downtown. Got reassigned. Last-minute staffing issue." Luca jerked his thumb at Celine. "She's with me." Additional security sweep. The guards exchanged looks. Celine kept her face neutral, bored, like she did this every day. Her heart was slamming against her ribs, but she'd learned a long time ago how to look calm while dying inside. Years of keeping her composure during codes and traumas had trained her well. One guard stepped closer, studying Celine's face. Don't recognize you. New hire. Started last week. She met his eyes, didn't blink. You want me to go back and tell Castellano you blocked a security check on his orders? Castellano was Roman's head of security. She'd heard the name enough times, overheard it during phone calls. Roman took while pacing her apartment. It was a gamble, but apparently the right one. The guard stepped back. Fine, but you stay in the perimeter zones. Don't approach the family areas. Understood. They walked through. The door closed behind them with a heavy click. Inside was chaos. Catering staff rushed past with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Someone was shouting about ice sculptures. The kitchen smelled like expensive food and stress sweat. Luca grabbed Celine's arm and pulled her down a service corridor before anyone could stop them. That bought us maybe 10 minutes before someone checks the roster and realizes you're not on it, he said. What now? Where's the main reception? East ballroom, but it's locked down tight. Everyone going in or out gets checked. Then we find another way. Luca stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. Maybe sitting in that safe house watching Roman marry someone else had finally broken whatever mechanism kept rational thought functioning. There's a servants' gallery, Luca finally said. Overlooks the ballroom. Used to use it for musicians back in the day. It's probably empty now. Show me. They moved through the mansion like ghosts, sticking to the back corridors and service stairs. Celine caught glimpses of the party through open doors, crystal chandeliers, women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos that cost more than cars. The wealth was suffocating. Everywhere she looked, money and power pressed in on itself, dense and toxic. The servants' gallery was accessed through a narrow door hidden behind a tapestry. Luca picked the lock in under 30 seconds. Inside was a dusty corridor that opened onto a balcony overlooking the ballroom below. This is as far as I go, Luca whispered. You've got eyes on the room. But Celine, getting out is going to be harder than getting in. I know. Do you? Because once they figure out you're here, there's no talking your way free. These people solve problems permanently. Celine looked at him. Luca was young, maybe 25, with the kind of face that still held echoes of whoever he'd been before the Duvall organization got its hooks in him. Good person trapped in a bad life. Like Roman, like all of them probably. Thank you, she said, for everything. Luca nodded, then slipped back out the way they'd come. The door clicked shut. Celine was alone. She moved to the edge of the balcony and looked down. The ballroom was massive, all marble floors and gilded columns. Hundreds of people filled the space. Talking and laughing and drinking like this was any normal celebration. A string quartet played something classical in one corner. Waiters circulated with champagne, and there, standing near the center of it all, was Roman. He wore a black tuxedo that fit him like it had been made by someone who understood exactly how fabric should move over muscle and bone. His hair was pushed back, his face composed, his posture perfect. Next to him stood Celeste Laurent in her wedding dress, all silk and lace and inherited elegance. She had her hand on his arm, leaning in to whisper something. Roman smiled down at her. The smile looked real. Celine's hands tightened on the balcony railing. She watched them move through the crowd. Watched Roman shake hands and accept congratulations. Watched him play the role of devoted husband, with the same precision he'd once used to play the role of devoted lover. He was good at it. Too good. Like he'd been practicing his whole life. Maybe he had been. Maybe she'd been the deviation, not the rule. Maybe everything between them had been just a moment of weakness. A brief fantasy before reality reasserted itself. She watched for 20 minutes, watched Roman dance with his new wife, watched him lean in close to hear something his father said, a big man with silver hair and a face like granite, watched him navigate the room like he owned it, which she supposed he did, or would eventually. Then Roman excused himself from a conversation and moved toward a set of glass doors leading out to a terrace. He went alone, stepping into the rain without even grabbing a coat. The doors closed behind him. Celine didn't think, just moved. She found a staircase at the far end of the gallery that led down to a side hallway. From there, she could see the terrace doors through a series of archways. No guards immediately visible. Everyone was focused on the party inside. She walked straight through and out into the storm. The terrace overlooked the ocean. Below, waves crashed against rocky cliffs, white foam glowing in the darkness. The wind was brutal, cutting through Celine's wet clothes. Roman stood at the marble railing, hands braced against the stone, head bowed like he was praying or confessing. Celine walked up behind him, close enough that he'd feel her presence, far enough that she could run if he called for security. Was any of it real, she asked. Roman went rigid. For 3 seconds he didn't move at all. Then he slowly turned around. The composed mask cracked. For just an instant, Celine saw raw terror flash across his face. Not fear of physical danger, fear of something worse, recognition, accountability, truth. Celine. Her name came out strangled. What are you? You can't be here. Answer the question. Was any of it real? Roman looked around wildly, checking if anyone had seen them. The terrace was empty, but the party raged on just beyond the glass doors, visible through the rain-streaked windows. You need to leave right now, if my father finds out. I don't give a fuck about your father. I'm asking you. Everything you said, everything you promised. Was it real? Or was I just entertainment between board meetings? Of course it was real. He took a step closer, hands raised like he was approaching something dangerous, which maybe he was. Celine felt dangerous right now, felt capable of things that would have horrified her 6 months ago. Every word, every moment, you were the only real thing in my entire life. Then why am I standing here in the rain while you're in there celebrating with your wife? The word hit him like a physical blow. It's complicated. No, it's not. It's actually incredibly simple. You chose her, you chose this. Celine gestured at the mansion, the party, the empire. You chose everything except me. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Roman. You just didn't like the other options. He flinched. You don't understand the pressure. Then help me understand. Right now. Tell me what happened. Because I showed up at that safe house like you told me to. I packed my whole life into one bag. I was ready to disappear with you. And you married someone else on live television instead. Roman's jaw worked. He looked away, out at the ocean. And for a long moment, the only sounds were wind and waves and distant party music bleeding through the walls. 3 days before we were supposed to run, he finally said, voice barely audible over the storm. My father called me into his office. He knew about us, about the safe house, about everything. Someone had been watching you, watching us. Celine's stomach dropped. Who? Does it matter? He knew. And he told me that if I didn't marry Celeste, he'd have you killed. Not quickly, not cleanly. He described exactly what he'd do to you, how long he'd make it last. He said he'd kill Ivy too, and anyone else you'd ever cared about. He'd burn through your entire life like kindling just to prove a point. The words hung between them, ugly and brutal. So you folded. I protected you by lying to me, by letting me believe we had a future right up until you fucking married someone else. I thought if you hated me, you'd move on. You'd be safe. Celine laughed. It came out harsh and broken. You thought breaking my heart was keeping me safe. Jesus, Roman, you really are your father's son. His head snapped up. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. You made the same choice he would have made. Sacrifice the person you claim to love to protect the empire. That's exactly what a man like him would do. I'm nothing like him. Then prove it. Celine stepped closer. Close enough to see the rain beating on his skin, the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. Right now, walk away with me. Leave all of this behind and actually choose me for once. Roman stared at her with something that looked like hunger or desperation. I can't. Can't or won't. Can't. Celine, they'll hunt us. My father, the Laurents, everyone with a stake in this alliance. They'll burn through every resource they have to find us. And when they do, I don't care. I care. I love you too much to watch you die because of me. You love me too much to fight for me. That's what you mean. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Celine's voice cracked. You think I wanted to fall in love with someone who lives like this? You think I wanted any of this? I was fine before you. I had a normal life. And you walked into my ER and everything went to hell. And now I'm standing on a terrace in the rain, confronting a man who married someone else less than 6 hours after he was supposed to run away with me. I know. I know. And I'm sorry. You see, sorry isn't enough. Sorry doesn't give me back the last 6 months. Sorry doesn't fix the fact that I can't go back to my apartment because I'm terrified your father is going to make good on his threats anyway. Sorry is just another word you're using to avoid making an actual choice. Roman opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. What do you want me to say? I want you to say you were wrong. I want you to admit that you didn't choose me because you were scared, not because it was impossible. I want you to own the fact that you picked comfort over courage. It wasn't about comfort. It was about keeping you alive. No, it was about keeping yourself intact, because if you'd actually chosen me, you would have had to blow up your entire life. And you were too afraid to do it. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Roman's face went white. You're wrong, he said, but there was no conviction behind it. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're exactly where you want to be, playing the dutiful son, the perfect heir, the man who does what's expected because it's easier than doing what's right. You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. Make me understand how the man who told me he loved me more than anything could stand at an altar and promise his life to someone else. Roman's composure finally shattered. What was I supposed to do? Let him kill you. Let him torture you to death while I sat there knowing it was my fault. You want me to say I was afraid? Fine. I was fucking terrified. Not of dying. I've made peace with dying. I was terrified of watching you suffer because I'd been selfish enough to drag you into my world. So you sacrificed us instead. Yes, I sacrificed us to save you, and I'd do it again. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times because you being alive and hating me is better than you being dead because I wasn't strong enough to let you go. Celine felt something crack inside her chest, not her anger. That was still burning hot and fierce. But underneath it, underneath the rage and betrayal was grief, pure and devastating, because he actually believed what he was saying. Believed he'd saved her. Believed breaking her heart was an act of love instead of an act of cowardice. You didn't save me, she said quietly. You destroyed me. And the worst part is you did it while convincing yourself you were being noble. Roman reached for her. She stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't you fucking dare touch me. Celine, you want to know what I did after I watched you get married? I drove here. I convinced some to help me sneak into your wedding reception. I walked through your father's house past dozens of armed men who would probably kill me if they knew I was here. You know why. Because I needed to look you in the eye and hear you say it. I needed you to tell me the truth to my face, like I deserved. I'm telling you the truth now. No, you're not. You're telling me a story you've convinced yourself is true. But the actual truth is simpler. You had a choice between me and your empire, and you chose the empire. That's it. That's the whole truth. That's not. Yes, it is. And the really pathetic part, I would have chosen you. If someone had put a gun to my head and told me to pick between you and everything else in my life, I would have picked you. Because that's what love is supposed to mean. It's supposed to mean that person matters more than your safety, more than your comfort, more than your fucking empire. Roman's face was wet. Celine couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. I couldn't let him hurt you, so you hurt me yourself instead. That's so much better. I thought you'd survive it. I thought you'd hate me and move on and build a life somewhere safe. You thought wrong. Celine's voice went cold, flat. You didn't destroy us by marrying Celeste. You destroyed us the moment you decided I couldn't handle the truth. The moment you decided I was too weak or too fragile to make my own choices about my own life. That's when you killed us. Everything after that was just clean up. The words hit Roman like bullets. He staggered back against the railing, one hand pressed to his chest like he couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But it doesn't change anything. Movement behind the glass doors. A figure approaching. Roman saw it and panic flashed across his face again. You need to go. Right now, if anyone sees you, let them see. I don't care anymore. I care. Celine, please, I'm begging you. Leave. Get as far from here as possible and don't look back. Why? So you can pretend I never existed. So you can play house with your strategic wife and forget you ever wanted something real. So you can live. So you can have the future I couldn't give you. The door opened. A man stepped out onto the terrace. One of the security team, big and professional looking, scanning the space with practiced efficiency. His eyes landed on Celine, and his hand moved inside his jacket. Roman stepped between them instantly. She's leaving. No trouble. Just a guest who got turned around. The guard didn't buy it. Celine could see him calculating, trying to place her, figure out what threat level she represented. His hand stayed inside his jacket. "Mr. Duvall, I need to. I said she's leaving. Stand down." They stared at each other. The guard's jaw tightened. But he was Roman's man, not the Laurent's. And after a long, tense moment, he nodded and stepped back inside. Didn't take his eyes off Celine. Didn't move his hand away from whatever weapon he was carrying. Roman turned back to Celine. Up close, he looked haunted, hollowed out, like someone had scooped out everything vital and left only the shell. "Go," he said softly. "Please, before this gets worse. It can't get worse. We're already at the bottom. You'd be surprised how much further down things can go." Celine looked at him, really looked at him, and realized she was seeing a stranger. The man she'd fallen in love with had never existed. That version of Roman had been a fantasy, a performance, a beautiful lie they'd both wanted to believe. This was the real Roman Duvall, a man who chose survival over sacrifice, who chose fear over faith, who loved her just enough to break her heart, but not enough to actually fight for her. "Goodbye, Roman," she said. She turned to leave, made it 3 steps before his voice stopped her. "I do love you for whatever that's worth." Celine looked back over her shoulder. "It's worth exactly nothing." Then she walked away. Through the door past the guard who tracked her every movement, back through the mansion the way she'd come, moving fast now because adrenaline was wearing off and reality was crashing in. She'd actually done it, confronted him, demanded truth, and gotten exactly what she'd asked for. The truth was, he'd chosen wrong, had chosen the easier path, had convinced himself sacrifice was noble, when really it was just cowardice dressed up in better clothes. And now she knew, could stop wondering, could stop holding out hope for some impossible reconciliation, could finally let go. Celine made it back to the service entrance before the tears came. Then she was stumbling out into the rain, looking for Luca's car barely seen through the water streaming down her face. Half rain, half grief. A hand grabbed her arm. Celine spun, ready to fight, and found Luca pulling her toward a different vehicle. "Change of plans. Your entrance got flagged. We need to move now." They ran. Luca shoved her into an old sedan that definitely wasn't the car they'd arrived in. He peeled out before she'd even closed the door, tires spitting gravel as they shot down the driveway. "What happened?" Celine gasped, trying to catch her breath. "Security noticed you on the cameras, started asking questions. I grabbed a spare vehicle from the lot and came looking." Luca took a turn too fast, barely keeping control on the wet road. "You get what you needed." "Yeah, I got it." "Was it worth it?" Celine watched the Laurent estate disappear behind them, all those lights glowing in the darkness like a burning ship. Somewhere inside, Roman was going back to his party, back to his wife, back to the life he'd chosen instead of her. "I don't know," she admitted. "Ask me in a year. You got somewhere safe to go, because they're going to start looking for you." Damien Duvall doesn't appreciate people crashing his son's wedding. "I'll figure something out." That's not a plan. That's a hope. Hope is all I've got right now. Luca pulled onto the highway, merged into sparse late-night traffic. Rain hammered the windshield, the wipers barely keeping up. Celine stared out the window at nothing, feeling emptied out, hollowed, like she'd left something essential back on that terrace. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello, Miss Vale." A voice she didn't recognize, older. Calm in a way that suggested violence was always an option. "My name is Damien Duvall. I understand you had an interesting conversation with my son this evening." Celine's blood went cold. She looked at Luca. He'd gone white, hands tight on the wheel. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult me with lies." "You were seen, identified. I know exactly who you are and exactly what you mean to Roman." A pause. "Or what you meant to him, I suppose, past tense now. What do you want?" "To make something very clear, you had your dramatic moment. You confronted my son. You said your piece. I'm going to allow that to stand because I understand heartbreak makes people do foolish things. But this is the only time. If I hear that you've attempted to contact Roman again, if you show up anywhere near him or his wife, if you so much as send him a text message, I will kill you. Not quickly, Not painlessly. I will make it last long enough that you'll beg for death. Do you understand? Celine's hand shook around the phone. Yes. Good. You have 24 hours to leave Boston. I suggest you use them wisely. The line went dead. She lowered the phone slowly. Luca was watching her with horrified eyes. That was him, wasn't it? Damien. Celine nodded, unable to speak. Fuck. Luca slammed his hand against the steering wheel. What did he say? That I need to disappear. That if I don't, he'll kill me. He's not bluffing. When Roman Duvall makes a threat, he follows through. Always. I know. So what are you going to do? Good question. What was she going to do? She had maybe $3,000 in savings, had a job she loved but couldn't go back to, had friends she'd have to abandon to keep them safe, had a whole life in Boston that was now completely off limits. Roman's money. He'd said he sent money. She checked her bank account, hands trembling, the screen loaded. $50,000 had been deposited 4 hours ago. Blood money, hush money, guilt money. She should refuse it, should send it back, should do literally anything except accept payment for having her heart ripped out. But practicality won over pride. She needed that money, needed it to disappear, needed it to start over somewhere Roman Duvall couldn't reach her. Portland, Celine heard herself say. I'm going to Portland, Oregon. That's far. It's big enough to disappear in. It's not connected to anything here. That's actually not a terrible plan. Luca took the next exit headed toward the city. I can get you on a bus tonight. Cash transaction, no paper trail. You ditch your phone once you're out of state, start completely fresh. What about you? Won't you get in trouble for helping me? Probably. But I'm a nobody. Low level. They'll rough me up. Remind me where my loyalties should be. Then forget about me. You're the one they'll remember. I'm sorry I didn't mean to drag you into this. You saved my brother's life. This squares us. He glanced at her. But Celine, whatever you're feeling right now, anger, grief, whatever, you need to let it go. Carrying that across the country with you is just going to poison everything you try to build. How am I supposed to let it go? I loved him. I know. But love like that, the kind that exists in Roman Duvall's world, it doesn't survive. It gets crushed under the weight of all the things that matter more. Money, power, legacy. You were always going to lose him. The only question was how much of yourself you'd lose in the process. The words hurt because they were true. Celine had known from the beginning that Roman's world was incompatible with anything real or lasting. She didn't convince herself she could be the exception. Turned out there were no exceptions, just casualties. Luca dropped her at a bus station downtown, handed her an envelope with cash and a burner phone. The phone's got my number in it, one-time use only. If you need help getting settled, call me. After that, delete it. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just survive, that's thanks enough. He drove away. Celine stood on the curb in the rain, exhausted and soaked and empty. The bus station was grimy and fluorescent and smelled like urine and desperation. A drunk guy slept on a bench. A young mother tried to keep 2 kids quiet while they waited for a delayed departure. Normal people living normal lives. The kind of life Celine used to have. The kind she'd traded for 6 months of illicit romance, with a man who'd loved just enough to break her, but not enough to choose her. She bought a ticket to Portland on the 4 a.m. bus, found a bathroom, and changed out of her wet clothes into jeans and a sweatshirt from her bag. Looked at herself in the cracked mirror above the sinks. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes looked older, harder, like something fundamental had shifted behind them. The fragile nurse who'd once believed love could save monsters was gone. Burned away in a safe house while watching the man she loved marry someone else on television. What remained was someone different. Someone who'd walked into a crime lord's house and demanded truth. Someone who'd survived heartbreak and come out the other side changed. Not better, not whole, but alive, and maybe that was enough. Celine splashed cold water on her face, shouldered her bag, and walked out to wait for the bus that would carry her away from everything she'd ever known. In 24 hours, she'd be 3,000 miles away from Roman Duvall and his empire, and his strategic marriage and his father's threats. In 24 hours, she'd start building a life that belonged entirely to her. But first, she had to survive the night. She sat on a plastic chair bolted to the floor and watched the clock crawl toward departure time. Every person who walked past made her flinch. Every car that pulled up outside made her heart race. She kept expecting security to burst through the doors, kept expecting Roman to show up with some last-minute explanation, kept expecting the world to make sense again. None of those things happened. At 3:47 a.m., exactly 24 hours after she'd watched Roman get married, a bus pulled into the station with Portland displayed on the destination sign. Celine stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked toward the door without looking back. Behind her lay Boston, Roman. 6 months of stolen moments and whispered promises and love that had felt so real she'd believed it could survive anything. Ahead lay nothing. Blank space. Unknown territory. For the first time in months, Celine felt something other than grief. She felt free. The bus door hissed open. Celine climbed aboard, found a seat in the back, and pressed her face against the cold window as the city began to slide past. Rain streaked the glass, turning streetlights into blurred stars. The bus groaned and lurched forward, pulling out onto empty streets. Celine watched Boston disappear behind her and didn't cry, didn't hope, didn't regret. Just existed in the moment between what had been and what might come next, suspended in the terrible freedom of having nothing left to lose. The woman who'd fallen in love with Roman Duvall was dead. What rose from those ashes didn't have a name yet, but she was going to survive. And someday, maybe not today, maybe not this year, but someday, she was going to look back at this night and realize it wasn't an ending at all. It was the first painful step toward becoming someone who didn't need saving, someone who could save herself. The bus picked up speed, heading west through the rain toward a future Celine couldn't see but could finally, for the first time, imagine belonging to her. She closed her eyes and let the darkness carry her away. Portland welcomed Celine with rain. Different rain than Boston, softer, steadier, the kind that settled in for days instead of hours. She stepped off the bus at 11 p.m., 3 days after leaving, her body aching from cramped seats and rest-stop bathrooms, her mind still numb from exhaustion and adrenaline crash. The station was smaller than Boston's, cleaner, less desperate. She stood on the platform with her single bag and watched other passengers get picked up by family, friends, people who'd been waiting for them. Nobody was waiting for Celine. Nobody even knew she was here. That was the point. She checked into a motel off 82nd Avenue that charged by the week and didn't ask questions. The room smelled like cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. The mattress sagged in the middle. The shower had rust stains and water pressure that barely qualified as mist. It was perfect. Celine dropped her bag on the bed, locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle for good measure, and finally let herself feel it. All of it. The grief, the rage, the bone-deep exhaustion of running from the only life she'd ever known. She didn't cry. Tears felt too small for what she was carrying. Instead, she sat on the floor with her back against the door and stared at nothing until dawn light crept through the stained curtains. Then she got up and started building a new life. The first week was mechanical. Find an apartment. Something cheap, month to month, no background check. She found a studio in southeast Portland above a Vietnamese restaurant, 500 square feet of scuffed hardwood, and a kitchenette smaller than most closets. The landlord was an old woman who took cash and didn't care about references. "You running from something?" The woman asked, counting bills with practiced efficiency. "Does it matter?" "Not to me. Long as the rent shows up on time." She handed Celine a key. "Lease is in the drawer. Sign it or don't. I don't care much either way." Celine moved in that afternoon. The apartment came furnished, a futon that had seen better decades, a folding table, 2 chairs that didn't match. She bought sheets at a thrift store, a coffee maker, cheap dishes, the bare minimum to qualify as living instead of just existing. Then she started looking for work. Portland had plenty of hospitals, but Celine couldn't risk applying as a nurse. Background checks meant paper trails, meant someone potentially tracking her down. She needed something off the books, something that wouldn't ping any databases, or raise questions about why a qualified ER nurse was working for cash under a different name. She found a job at a free clinic in East Portland, the kind of place that served people who'd fallen through every other safety net. Homeless veterans, undocumented immigrants, addicts cycling through recovery and relapse. The pay was barely minimum wage. The hours were brutal. The director was a burned-out doctor named Marcus Webb, who looked like he hadn't slept since the 90s. You got medical training. He asked during the interview, which consisted of him looking up from a patient file long enough to register her presence. Yes, ER experience, trauma, gunshot wounds, overdoses, pretty much everything. Can you start today? Yes, you're hired. Don't steal medications and don't ask patients about immigration status. Beyond that, I don't care what you do. He handed her a laminated badge with volunteer printed across it. Welcome to the circus. The clinic was chaos. Organized chaos, barely, held together by Marcus's grim competence and the dedication of a handful of volunteers who believed health care was a right instead of a privilege. Celine threw herself into the work with manic focus. 12-hour days, 14-16. Whatever it took to stay busy, stay useful, stay too exhausted to think about Boston, about Roman. She changed her appearance, cut her hair short, dyed it darker, started wearing glasses even though her vision was fine. Lost weight without trying, her body burning through calories faster than she could replace them. When she looked in the mirror now, she barely recognized herself. Good. The woman she used to be was dead anyway. 6 weeks into her new life, Celine was stitching up a homeless man's infected hand wound when her phone buzzed. The burner Luca had given her. She'd almost thrown it away a dozen times, but kept it charged out of habit. She finished the sutures, gave the man antibiotics and instructions he probably wouldn't follow, then checked the message. You need to call me now, L. Celine's stomach dropped. She hadn't heard from Luca since Boston, hadn't wanted to. The plan was complete separation, total silence. Him reaching out meant something had changed, something bad. She stepped outside the clinic into the parking lot and dialed. Luca picked up on the first ring. Thank God, I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. I've been working. What's wrong? Everything. Jesus, Celine, where do I even start? His voice was tight, stressed in a way that made her pulse spike. Roman is falling apart. That's not my problem. It is when he's asking questions about you, when he's digging into where you went, when he's making enough noise that people are starting to notice. Celine closed her eyes. I've been gone for 6 weeks. Why is he? Because he found out the truth about that night, about why his father threatened you. What are you talking about? His father threatened me because I was a liability. No, that's what Roman thought too, but it wasn't the real reason. Luca took a shaky breath. Damien didn't threaten you to protect the Laurent alliance. He threatened you because he was the one who leaked the information about your relationship to Marcus Laurent in the first place. The words didn't make sense. Celine's brain tried to process them and failed. What? Damien set the whole thing up. He knew about you and Roman from the beginning. He let it continue because he was waiting for the right moment to use it. When the Laurents started pushing for a marriage alliance, Damien told Marcus about Roman's affair, made it seem like he'd just discovered it. Marcus demanded Roman marry Celeste immediately, or the deal was off. Damien got exactly what he wanted. His son married to Laurent money and power, and you eliminated as a distraction. Roman thinks he was protecting you, but really he was just following a script his father wrote. Celine's legs went weak. She sat down hard on the curb. How do you know this? Because Damien got drunk last week and bragged about it to his inner circle, called it his finest manipulation, said Roman's weakness for you was predictable and exploitable. One of the guys there owed me a favor, recorded the whole thing, sent it to Roman anonymously. Why would someone do that? Because there are people in the organization who are tired of Damien's games, who think Roman might actually be different if he wasn't being controlled like a puppet. Luca's voice dropped. Roman listened to that recording and lost his mind. He confronted his father. They had it out in front of everyone. Roman accused Damien of destroying his life. Damien said he was protecting the family legacy. It got ugly, physical. Roman put him in the hospital. Jesus, it gets worse. The Laurents found out Roman hit his own father over you. Celeste's family is furious. They're threatening to dissolve the alliance, start a war, burn everything down. Roman doesn't care. He told them he never wanted the marriage in the first place. Told Celeste he's filing for annulment. He's ready to walk away from the whole empire. Celine's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Why are you telling me this? Because he's looking for you. He's hired people. Private investigators. He's checking hospitals, clinics, anywhere you might have gone. He's desperate to find you, to apologize, to beg you to give him another chance. No, Celine. I said no. I don't care what his reasons were. I don't care that his father manipulated him. He still made his choice. He still chose the easy path, instead of fighting for what he actually wanted. He's fighting now. He's burning his entire life down to prove he was wrong. Good for him. He can burn alone. She stood up, paced the parking lot. You need to stop calling me. Delete this number. Forget you know where I am. I don't know where you are. But Celine, listen to me. Roman isn't going to stop looking. And if he finds you, if he shows up here asking for another chance, you need to decide right now how you're going to handle it. Because that recording changed everything. He thought he was saving you. Turns out he was just being used. That doesn't change what he did, doesn't it? If someone manipulated you into thinking the only way to save the person you loved was to destroy them, wouldn't you do it? The question hit harder than Celine wanted to admit. She thought about the safe house, about watching Roman marry Celeste, about the text message telling her to disappear. He thought he was protecting her, thought breaking her heart was mercy. He'd been wrong, but he'd believed it. I need to go, she said. Celine, wait, She hung up, stood in the parking lot, breathing hard, trying to process what she just learned. Damien had orchestrated everything, had used Roman's love for her as a weapon, had manipulated his own son into sacrificing his happiness to preserve an empire Roman had never wanted in the first place. It was monstrous, calculated, evil in its precision, and it didn't change anything. Because even if Roman had been manipulated, he'd still folded, still believed the lies, still chosen fear over faith. A stronger man would have questioned the threats, would have found another way, would have trusted her enough to fight beside him instead of making decisions for her. Roman had loved her. She didn't doubt that anymore. But his love had been weak, conditional, the kind that withered the moment it got tested. Celine deleted Luca's number, threw the burner phone in a dumpster, went back inside the clinic and lost herself in work. For 3 weeks, everything was fine. Then one Tuesday afternoon, a woman walked into the clinic asking for her. Celine was in the exam room treating a kid with strep throat when Marcus knocked on the door. Someone here to see you, says it's urgent. I'm with a patient. She says she knows you from Boston, Ivy something. Celine's blood went cold. She finished with the kid, prescribed antibiotics, then walked out to the waiting room on legs that felt like water. Ivy sat in one of the plastic chairs, looking completely out of place in designer jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than Celine's entire wardrobe. She stood up when Celine appeared. Hi, Ivy said quietly. I'm sorry. I know you probably don't want to see me. How did you find me? I'm a nurse. You're a nurse. I called every free clinic on the West Coast until someone recognized your description. Ivy glanced around at the shabby waiting room, the peeling paint, the fluorescent lights. Can we talk somewhere private? They ended up in Celine's apartment. Ivy looked around at the sparse furnishings, the thrift store dishes, the futon that was more duct tape than fabric. Jesus, Celine, this is what you've been living in. It's fine. It's depressing. You were a trauma nurse at a major hospital. You could work anywhere. Why are you hiding in a free clinic making poverty wages? Because I'm building something different, something that actually matters. Ivy sat down at the folding table. I'm not here to judge your life choices. I'm here because you need to know what's happening back home. I don't want to know. That's why I left. Roman's father is dead. The word stopped Celine cold. What? Roman Duvall died 3 days ago. Heart attack. At least that's the official story. Ivy pulled out her phone, showed Celine a news article. Crime boss Roman Duvall dead at 58. Empire in chaos. The unofficial story is that someone close to him poisoned him. No proof, no suspects. But people are talking. Celine sat down slowly. You think Roman did it. I think Roman hated his father enough to do it. I think Roman blamed his father for destroying his relationship with you. I think Roman is now sitting on top of a crime empire with no one to control him anymore. Ivy met her eyes, and I think you need to come back to Boston. Are you insane? Hear me out. With Damien dead, the threats against you are meaningless. The marriage alliance is falling apart anyway. Celeste filed for divorce last week. Roman is reorganizing the entire organization, purging his father's loyalists, trying to build something different. And he's asking about you constantly. He wants to find you, to apologize, to explain. I don't care. Yes, you do. You wouldn't have run all the way to Portland if you didn't care. If it was really over, you'd have stayed in Boston and told him to go to hell. But you ran because you're still in love with him. I'm not. Don't lie to me. I know you. I know that look. You're in love with a man who destroyed you and you hate yourself for it. Ivy leaned forward. But Celine, what if you could have him? What if he's actually becoming the person you wanted him to be? Isn't that worth exploring? No, because he had a chance to be that person when it mattered, and he chose wrong. He chose wrong because he was being manipulated by a psychopath. His own father used his love for you as a weapon, and yeah, he fell for it. He believed the lies. He made the wrong call. But he was trying to protect you. Doesn't that count for something? Celine stood up, paced to the window. Outside, rain was starting again. It never really stopped in Portland, just paused between storms. Why are you really here? She asked. Roman didn't send you. You barely knew him. Ivy was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. I'm here because I watched my best friend disappear in the middle of the night. I'm here because you won't return my calls. I'm here because the last time we talked, you sounded dead inside and I'm worried about you. I'm fine. You're existing. That's not the same as fine. Ivy stood, walked over to stand next to her. Look, I'm not saying you owe Roman anything. I'm not saying you have to forgive him or take him back or whatever romantic gesture you're imagining. I'm saying you should at least talk to him, hear what he has to say, then make a choice based on who he actually is instead of who you think he is. I know who he is. He's a coward who chose his empire over me. He chose what he thought was your safety over his happiness. That's not cowardice. That's sacrifice. Stupid sacrifice. Misguided sacrifice. But sacrifice nonetheless. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to hold on to her anger because anger was easier than grief. But Ivy's words were cracking something open inside her chest. What if I go back and nothing's changed? She asked quietly. What if he's still the same person, just with better excuses? Then you walk away. Again. But at least you'll know. They stood in silence, watching rain streak down the window. Outside, Portland went about its business. Cars passing, people hurrying under umbrellas, the city breathing in its perpetual gray dampness. Celine thought about Roman, about the recording Luca had mentioned, about Damien orchestrating everything like a chess master moving pieces, about Roman finally standing up to his father and destroying his entire life in the process, about whether any of that actually mattered. I need to think about it, she finally said. Fair enough. Ivy grabbed her jacket. I'm staying at the Heathman for 3 days. Room 412. If you decide you want to at least hear him out, call me. I'll set it up. How would you even? Because Roman gave me his number and told me if I ever heard from you, to beg you to talk to him. He's desperate, Celine. I've never seen a man more destroyed by his own choices. Ivy left. Celine stood in her empty apartment and tried to decide if Roman's destruction was something she wanted to witness or something she wanted to avoid. For 2 days, she did nothing. Worked at the clinic, came home, stared at the walls. The question followed her everywhere. What if Ivy was right? What if Roman had genuinely changed? What if he was becoming someone worth believing in? On the 3rd day, Marcus pulled her aside after a shift. You've got someone asking questions about you, he said. Guy came by yesterday. Well-dressed, professional, showed me a photo, asked if I knew you. Celine's stomach dropped. What did you tell him? Nothing. I don't talk to people who show up asking about my staff. But he's not the only one. There have been 3 different people in the last week, all asking about a woman matching your description. All very polite, all very insistent. I need to leave, probably, or you could face whatever you're running from. Because in my experience, you can only run so far before the thing chasing you catches up anyway. That night, Celine called Ivy. Set it up, she said. 1 conversation, that's all. Thank you, I'll let him know. Not here, not in Portland, somewhere neutral. Where? Celine thought for a moment. Seattle. There's a coffee shop called Zeitgeist on Jackson Street. Public, busy, safe. Tell him to be there Saturday at noon. He'll be there, and Ivy. If this is some kind of trick, if he brings anyone with him, if there's any suggestion this is anything other than a conversation, I'm gone. For good this time. Understood. Celine hung up and immediately regretted it. What was she doing? Why was she giving Roman another chance to hurt her? Why was she walking back toward the fire that had already burned her once? Because you need to know, a voice whispered in her head. You need to look him in the eye and hear the truth. Then you can finally let go. Saturday came too fast and too slow. Celine took the Amtrak up to Seattle that morning, watched gray landscapes slide past the windows, tried to prepare herself for seeing Roman again. She'd played this moment out in her head 1,000 times. Imagined all the things she'd say, all the accusations she'd hurl, all the ways she'd make him understand exactly what he'd destroyed. But now that it was actually happening, all those rehearsed speeches felt hollow. Zeitgeist was crowded when she arrived. Students on laptops, artists sketching, the usual Seattle coffee shop ecosystem. Celine ordered tea she didn't want and found a table in the back corner where she could watch the door. Roman walked in at 11:58. He looked terrible. The polished crime air was gone, replaced by someone who'd forgotten how to sleep. His hair was longer, uncombed. His clothes were expensive, but wrinkled. His face was gaunt, shadows carved deep beneath his eyes. He moved like someone who'd taken a beating and was still feeling it. He spotted her and stopped. For 5 seconds, they just stared at each other across the crowded coffee shop. Then he walked over slowly, like approaching something that might bolt. Sit down. He sat. Didn't order anything. Just folded his hands on the table and looked at her with eyes that held so much pain, Celine almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Thank you for agreeing to meet me, Roman said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either, but apparently I'm a masochist. A ghost of a smile. I deserve that. You deserve a lot worse than that. I know. They sat in silence. Around them, normal people lived normal lives. Ordered coffee, complained about work, made plans for the weekend. Everything Celine had once wanted and thought she'd found with Roman before discovering it was all built on sand. I heard about your father, she finally said. Roman's jaw tightened. I didn't kill him. Everyone's asking. The police, the Laurents, the FBI. Everyone thinks I poisoned him, but I didn't. He met her eyes. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I didn't. Then who did? I don't know. Could have been anyone. He had a lot of enemies. Made a lot of people suffer over the years. Someone finally had enough. Roman looked down at his hands. Or maybe it really was a heart attack. Maybe the universe decided he'd caused enough damage. Poetic. Not really. Just final. He took a breath. Did Ivy tell you about the recording? She mentioned it. I need you to understand something. When my father told me he'd kill you if I didn't marry Celeste, I believed him. I'd watched him destroy people for decades. I knew exactly what he was capable of. The idea of him hurting you. His voice cracked. I couldn't let that happen. I thought breaking your heart was mercy compared to what he'd do. You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. No, I didn't. Because I was terrified you'd try to fight and get yourself killed. I thought making the choice for you was protecting you. Roman's hands clenched into fists. I was wrong. About everything. I should have told you. Should have fought with you instead of for you. Should have trusted that you were strong enough to handle the truth. Yes, you should have. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry, Celine. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too afraid to believe it could survive. Celine studied his face. The exhaustion, the regret, the naked vulnerability of someone who'd been stripped down to nothing and was still standing. What do you want from me? She asked. Another chance. I know I don't deserve it. I know I already burned that bridge. But I'm asking anyway. To do what? Date you while you run a criminal empire. Pretend the last few months didn't happen. Go back to sneaking around and hoping your next disaster doesn't kill me. No, I'm done with all of it. The empire, the family business, everything. Roman leaned forward. I'm walking away, selling my shares to the other families, liquidating assets. I'm done being Roman Duvall's son. Celine blinked. You're lying. I'm not. I've already started the process. In 6 months, I'll have nothing to do with any of it. I'll be nobody. Just a man with money trying to figure out how to live a normal life. That's insane. You can't just walk away from that world. I can. I am, because the alternative is spending the rest of my life becoming my father. And I'd rather die than let that happen. The conviction in his voice was startling. This wasn't the Roman she'd known in Boston, the one who talked about escape but never actually tried. This was someone who'd already made the choice and was living with the consequences. Even if I believed you, Celine said carefully, it doesn't change what happened. You still lied to me, still manipulated me, still let me pack a bag and sit in a safe house waiting for you while you married someone else. I know. You broke something in me, Roman. Something I don't know how to fix. I know that too. Then why are you here? What could you possibly say that would make any of this okay? Roman was quiet for a long moment when he spoke. His voice was barely audible over the coffee shop noise. Nothing. There's nothing I can say that makes it okay. I'm not here because I think you should forgive me. I'm here because I needed you to know that you were right about everything. Love without courage is meaningless, and I loved you, but I wasn't brave enough to fight for you when it mattered. He stood up. I just needed you to know that I see that now. And I'm trying to become someone who would have made different choices. He turned to leave. Celine sat frozen, watching through the window as Roman walked out into Seattle rain and disappeared into the crowd. She'd prepared for a lot of things. For him to beg, for him to manipulate, for him to promise the world and deliver nothing. She hadn't prepared for him to actually let her go. The tea in front of her had gone cold. Around her, people kept living their lives, oblivious to the fact that Celine's entire understanding of the last few months had just been upended. Roman wasn't trying to win her back. He was trying to set her free. She stood up on shaking legs and walked outside. Rain soaked through her jacket immediately. She looked left-right, trying to spot him in the crowd. There, half a block away, walking with his head down and his hands in his pockets. Celine started after him, broke into a run. Roman. He stopped, turned. She caught up to him, breathing hard, rain streaming down her face. You're just leaving, she demanded. You're not even going to fight. I told you. I heard what you said, that I deserve better, that you're letting me go. But what if I don't want to be let go? What if I want you to actually fight for me? Roman stared at her, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. Are you saying? I am saying I don't know. I'm saying I'm furious at you. I'm saying you destroyed me, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again. But I'm also saying that walking away, without even trying, feels like you're still choosing the easy path. The easy path would be begging you to take me back. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. Then why are you doing it? Because you asked me to become someone brave enough to fight for what I wanted, and what I want is for you to be happy, even if that means being happy without me. The words hung between them in the rain. Celine searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle. She'd been so sure he'd try to win her back with pretty words and empty promises, but there was nothing but honesty in his eyes. Raw, painful honesty. I'm not ready to forgive you, she said. I know. I might never be ready to forgive you. I know that too, but I'm also not ready to say goodbye. Roman's expression shifted, not hope exactly. Something more fragile. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we try something different. Maybe we start over. Not as the people we were in Boston, that's dead, but as whoever we are now, strangers who happen to know each other's worst choices. Strangers. Can you do that? Can you put aside everything that happened and just be a person instead of a guilt-ridden martyr trying to earn forgiveness? For the first time since he'd walked into the coffee shop, Roman smiled. A real smile, small and uncertain but genuine. I can try. Good, because I've been trying to hate you for 2 months and I'm tired of failing. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers carefully, like holding something precious and breakable. They stood in the rain on a Seattle street corner, two people who destroyed each other, trying to figure out if they could build something from the ruins. Where do we even start? Roman asked. I don't know. Coffee that's actually good instead of whatever that place was serving. He laughed. The sound was startled and real and made something in Celine's chest unclench for the first time in months. They walked down the street together, still holding hands, looking for somewhere dry. Around them, the city moved in its Saturday afternoon rhythm. People shopping, people arguing, people living ordinary lives. Maybe they could have that someday. Maybe not. But for the first time since watching Roman marry Celeste on television, Celine felt like the future wasn't already written. They found a small cafe 3 blocks over, ordered actual food because neither of them had eaten properly in days, sat across from each other and talked about nothing important. The weather. Seattle versus Portland. The fact that Roman had never actually been to the Pacific Northwest before this weekend. Normal conversation. The kind that didn't carry the weight of empires or betrayals. It felt strange, fragile, like they were learning how to exist in the same space without everything catching fire. I have a question. Roman said after they had exhausted the topic of whether Seattle or Portland had better coffee. Okay, that clinic where you work. The free one in Portland. What would it take to expand it, to serve more people? Celine studied him. Why? Because I have money, a lot of money, and no idea what to do with it now that I'm not using it to fund operations and pay off politicians. If you wanted to build something bigger, something that could actually make a difference, I could help. You want to fund a free clinic. I want to fund whatever you want to build. A clinic, a hospital, a network of healthcare centers across the West Coast. Whatever you think would help the most people. Celine sat back processing. That's not how you earn forgiveness. I know I'm not doing it to earn anything. I'm doing it because you're one of the few people I've ever met who gives a damn about helping people who can't help themselves. And that should be supported, just like that. You throw money at my work, not throw. Invest. There's a difference. Roman leaned forward. Celine. I've spent my entire life watching money get used to hurt people, to control them, to destroy them. I'd like to try using it for something else, and I trust you to know what that something should be. She wanted to say no, wanted to tell him she didn't need his money or his guilt-driven generosity, but the truth was the clinic was barely staying afloat. They turned away patients daily because they lacked resources. Marcus was burning out. The whole operation was held together with duct tape and stubborn refusal to give up. With actual funding, they could help hundreds more people. Thousands. I'd want full control, she said. You don't get to dictate how the money's used or what patients we serve or any of it. You're just the funding source. Done. And this doesn't mean we're together. This is a separate thing. Understood. And if you pull the funding because we have a fight, or you decide you're done trying to be a good person, I will personally hunt you down and make you regret it. Roman smiled. I'd expect nothing less. They shook on it. The handshake lasted a few seconds too long, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in a way that sent electricity up her arm. Celine pulled back first. We should probably figure out logistics, she said, trying to sound professional instead of flustered. Right, logistics. Roman pulled out his phone. I'll have my lawyer draft the paperwork. A charitable foundation. You run it, I fund it. Everyone benefits. You have a lawyer who does charitable foundations. I have a lawyer who does whatever I pay him to do. He's very flexible. They spent the next hour hammering out details. How much money? What timeline? What kind of oversight Celine would accept? It was the most normal, functional conversation they'd ever had. No life or death stakes, no hidden agendas, just two people trying to solve a problem together. When they finally left the cafe, it was getting dark. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, reflecting streetlights in fractured patterns. I should get back to Portland, Celine said. I have a shift tomorrow. Right, of course. Roman looked like he wanted to say something else but was stopping himself. What? Can I see you again? Not for business, just to see you. Celine considered. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a mistake, that she was walking back towards someone who'd already proven he'd choose wrong when tested. That forgiveness was one thing, but trust was something else entirely. But standing there in post-rain Seattle, with Roman looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, Celine found herself wanting to say yes. Maybe, she said. Call me next week. We'll see. I'll take it. He walked her to the train station. They stood on the platform, watching departure time cycle through the digital display. Thank you, Roman said quietly, for giving me a chance to at least explain. I know it doesn't fix anything, but it means everything anyway. Don't thank me yet. I'm still furious at you, as you should be. The train pulled in. Celine grabbed her bag, started toward the doors, then impulsively turned back. She kissed him, quick and hard and over, before either of them could think about it. That doesn't mean anything, she said, except maybe goodbye. Or hello, I don't know which. Roman stood frozen, fingers touching his lips like he couldn't quite believe it had happened. Celine boarded the train and found a seat by the window. As the train pulled out of the station, she watched Roman standing on the platform, still staring after her with an expression that looked like hope and heartbreak in equal measure. She leaned her head against the cold glass and tried to figure out what the hell she'd just done. Made a mistake, probably. Opened a door that should have stayed closed, given a second chance to someone who'd already wasted the first one. But as the train carried her south through the darkness toward Portland, Celine found herself thinking about what Marcus had said. You can only run so far before the thing chasing you catches up. Maybe she was tired of running. Maybe it was time to stand still and see what happened next, even if what happened next was painful. Even if trusting Roman again turned out to be the stupidest decision she'd ever made. At least she'd know. At least she wouldn't spend the rest of her life wondering what if. The train rattled through the night. Celine closed her eyes and let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it might look like if Roman actually became the person he claimed he wanted to be. If he actually walked away from his empire. If he actually used his money to help instead of hurt. If he actually proved that people could change. It seemed impossible, a fairy tale. The kind of thing that didn't happen in real life, where crime lords' sons didn't suddenly develop consciences, and broken relationships didn't get second chances. But then again, 3 months ago, Celine would have said it was impossible for an ER nurse to fall in love with a man who got shot for a living. And look how that turned out. She opened her eyes and stared out at the darkness rushing past, wondering if she was about to make the best decision of her life or walk straight into a second heartbreak that would finish what the first one started. Only one way to find out. The foundation paperwork arrived 6 days later via courier. Celine was at the clinic treating a teenager's infected piercing when Marcus walked in holding a thick manila envelope with the law firm's embossed logo across the front. "This just came for you," he said, eyebrows raised. "From Berkshire Legal Group. That's expensive representation. What did you do, win the lottery?" Celine's hand stilled on the antiseptic swab. Something like that. She finished with the patient, gave instructions about keeping the site clean, then took the envelope to the tiny office that doubled as a supply closet. Inside were contracts, incorporation documents, and a letter from Roman's attorney outlining the structure of the Hartwell Community Healthcare Foundation. Initial funding, $2 million. Projected annual budget, $500,000. Full operational control vested in Celine Vale, founder and executive director. At the bottom, a handwritten note in Roman's precise script. No strings, no conditions. Just build something that matters. Celine sat in the cramped office, staring at papers that represented more money than she'd see in a lifetime of nursing. Money that could change everything. Expand the clinic. Hire actual staff. Provide medications they currently had to ration. Serve everyone who walked through the door instead of turning people away. Blood money. A voice whispered in her head, crime empire money. Money built on suffering. But another voice, quieter, more pragmatic, countered. Money that could ease suffering now. Money that could save lives regardless of where it came from. She signed the papers. That night Roman called. "Did you get the documents?" "Yeah, it's too much. It's a starting point. If you need more to really scale up, let me know." Celine leaned against her apartment window, watching rain fall on southeast Portland. "I'm not comfortable with this. With the foundation. With you buying your way back into my life." Roman was quiet for a moment. "That's not what I'm doing. The foundation exists whether we talk again or not. You could hang up right now and never speak to me again, and the money would still be there. Then why are you calling?" "Because I wanted to hear your voice. Because I spent 2 hours in meetings today with lawyers and accountants and people managing my father's estate, and all I could think about was how you looked in Seattle, how you kissed me before getting on the train." Something in Celine's chest tightened. That kiss didn't mean anything. "I know, you said that. I'm just telling you what I thought about anyway." The honesty in his voice was disarming. No games, no manipulation, just straightforward truth. "How's the empire dismantling going?" she asked, slowly. "Turns out walking away from organized crime is complicated. There are contracts, territories, people whose livelihoods depend on operations I'm trying to shut down. I can't just burn it all overnight, but you're actually doing it. Yes, I've already sold off 3 major holdings, cut ties with 6 different families, pissed off approximately everyone who worked with my father. He sounded exhausted. The Laurents are threatening legal action. My father's old associates think I'm weak, and someone tried to run me off the road last week. Celine straightened. What? Don't worry, I'm fine. They wanted to scare me, not kill me. If they'd wanted me dead, I'd be dead. That's not reassuring. It's the world I'm living in until I finish extricating myself. 6 more months. Maybe less if I'm lucky. A pause. I don't want you anywhere near this mess. That's why I'm telling you. So you understand that staying away from me right now is the smart choice. Are you trying to talk me out of giving you a second chance? I'm trying to be honest about what that second chance looks like. It looks like me dealing with dangerous people while trying to dismantle an empire. It looks like potential violence and constant risk. It looks like everything I wanted to protect you from in the first place. Celine closed her eyes. This was the test, wasn't it? Roman was giving her an out, showing her the reality instead of selling her a fantasy. The old Roman would have lied, would have minimized the danger, would have told her everything was fine. This Roman was telling her the truth and letting her make her own choice. I'm still angry at you, she said. You should be. And I don't trust you yet. I wouldn't trust me either. But I want to try. Whatever that means. She could hear Roman's breath catch. You're sure? No. But I'm doing it anyway. They talked for 2 more hours. About nothing. About everything. About what Celine wanted to do with the foundation and Roman's plans for after he liquidated his father's holdings. They didn't talk about Boston, didn't talk about Celeste, or the wedding, or the safe house. Those wounds were too fresh to touch directly. Instead, they built something new, tentative, fragile as spun glass. Celine started calling him once a week, then twice, then every other day. The conversations were careful at first, both of them navigating around the minefield of their history. But gradually, carefully, they found a rhythm. Roman told her about the business of leaving the criminal underworld, the negotiations, the threats, the constant tension of trying to extract himself from a life that didn't let people go easily. Celine told him about the clinic expansion, about hiring 2 new nurses and a part-time doctor, about the patients whose lives were changing because they finally had access to consistent health care. 3 weeks after Seattle, Roman flew to Portland. He texted first. I'm in town for meetings. Can I see you? Celine's first instinct was to say no, keep the distance. Keep this thing between them theoretical and safe. Instead, she texted back an address. They met at a park along the Willamette River. Gray afternoon, clouds threatening rain that hadn't arrived yet. Roman was waiting on a bench overlooking the water, wearing jeans and a dark jacket, looking more normal than she'd ever seen him. No suits, no bodyguards, just a man sitting alone watching boats drift past. Celine sat down next to him, leaving a careful foot of space between them. Hi, she said. Hi. He looked at her like he was memorizing her face. You cut your hair shorter, needed a change. It looks good. They sat in silence, watching the river. Portland went about its business around them. Joggers, cyclists, people walking dogs. Normal life happening while Celine sat next to a man who'd broken her heart and was somehow impossibly trying to put it back together. The foundation cleared its first major audit, she said. Everything's legitimate, legal, above board. Good. That's good. Marcus wants to open a second location, somewhere in North Portland where the need is even higher. Do it. I'll adjust the funding. Just like that. Just like that. Roman turned to look at her. Celine, I meant what I said. The money isn't leverage. It's not a bargaining chip. Use it however you think will help the most people. She studied his face, looking for the angle, the hidden agenda, found nothing but sincerity. Why are you really here? She asked. Because I missed you. Because phone calls aren't enough. Because I'm trying to figure out if we can actually salvage this, or if I should accept that I destroyed something irreparable. And what do you think? I think you're sitting here instead of walking away. So maybe there's hope. Celine's throat was tight. Don't mistake my curiosity for forgiveness. I'm not. I know the difference. Do you? Because sometimes I think you're so busy punishing yourself, you can't see that I'm not ready to absolve you yet. Roman nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. I'm tired of apologies. They don't fix anything. Then what do you want from me? Good question. What did she want? For him to suffer. He was already suffering. For him to prove he'd changed. He was actively dismantling his entire life to prove exactly that. For the past to be different. Impossible. Time, she finally said. I want time to figure out if the person you're becoming is someone I can actually trust. Not just in theory, in practice. How much time? However long it takes. Weeks, months, maybe years. Can you do that? Can you be patient while I figure this out? Yes. The certainty in his voice startled her. Just like that. No argument. Celine, I spent 6 months lying to you and then destroyed us in one night. If you need years to trust me again, that's still less time than I deserve to be shut out. Roman shifted to face her fully. I'll take whatever you're willing to give. Phone calls, occasional visits, emails every 6 months. Whatever lets you feel safe. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think he'd actually become someone different. But trust had to be earned, not declared. I'm going to test you, she said. Push boundaries. See if you revert to type when things get hard. I know. And when that happens, I might walk away for good. I know that too. Then why are you here? Because giving up would be easier, and I'm done taking the easy path. Celine felt something crack open in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. The first hairline fracture in the wall she'd built. She reached over and took his hand. Roman looked down at their joined hands like he'd been given something precious and breakable. They sat like that for 20 minutes, not talking, just existing in the same space without everything catching fire. When Celine finally stood to leave, Roman walked her to her car. When can I see you again, he asked. I don't know. I'll call you. Okay. She got in her car, started the engine. Roman stood in the parking lot, watching her with an expression that held so much longing it physically hurt to look at. Celine drove away without looking back. For 2 weeks, everything was fine. The clinic expanded. Roman stayed in contact but kept his distance. They talked on the phone, carefully building something that resembled friendship with the ghost of their old relationship haunting every conversation. Then Marcus pulled Celine aside during a shift. Someone's been asking about the foundation, he said quietly. Where the money came from, who's funding it? Celine's stomach dropped. Who's asking? FBI. They came by yesterday, very polite, very interested in our sudden influx of resources. What did you tell them? The truth that we received funding from a legitimate charitable foundation showed them the paperwork. They seemed satisfied, but Marcus hesitated. They asked specifically about you, about where you came from, about your connection to Roman Duvall. The room tilted. They said his name. Yeah, asked if you'd ever had contact with the Duvall organization. I told them you were just a nurse, that I didn't know anything about your personal life. But Celine, if the FBI is connecting you to Roman, that's not good. She went home early, handshaking, and called Roman immediately. The FBI came to the clinic, she said as soon as he picked up. They're asking about you, about us, about the foundation. Silence. Then fuck. What's happening? My father's empire is under federal investigation, has been for years. With him dead, they're scrambling to build cases against everyone who worked with him, including me. Roman's voice was tight. I thought I could walk away clean, but they're treating me like a continuation of his operations instead of someone trying to leave. What does that mean for the foundation? It means they might seize the assets, claim it's money laundering, use it as evidence that I'm still operating. Celine felt rage building in her chest. You told me this was clean. You told me it was legitimate. It is. The money came from legal holdings, but the FBI doesn't care about technicalities. They care about building a case. And I just handed them a connection between you and me that they can exploit. I could lose everything. The clinic, the expansion, all of it. I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix it. How? How do you fix federal investigators deciding you're still a criminal? I cooperate. I give them everything they want about my father's operations. I testify. I make myself useful enough that they leave the foundation alone. Celine's blood went cold. You're going to testify against your father's associates. Yes. Roman, they'll kill you. Probably, but it's the only play I have left that keeps you out of this. No. No. Find another way. There isn't another way. If I don't cooperate, they prosecute me. If they prosecute me, they seize every asset I control, including the foundation. Everything you've built disappears. Celine wanted to scream, wanted to throw her phone across the room, Wanted to go back in time and refuse the money, refuse Roman's help, refuse to let herself get tangled in his world again. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she said. This is why I left Boston. Your world doesn't let people go. It just keeps pulling them back in. I know. You were right. You've been right about everything. Roman's voice cracked. I'm going to fix this. I promise. Just trust me. Trust you. You just told me federal investigators are building a case that could destroy everything I've worked for. Why the hell should I trust you? Because I love you and I'm not going to let you suffer from my mistakes. The words hung in the air. Celine realized she was crying. Love isn't enough. You already proved that. I know, but it's all I have to offer anyway. She hung up. For 3 days, Celine heard nothing. No calls, no texts, just silence while she waited for federal agents to show up and dismantle her life. On the 4th day, Ivy called. Turn on the news. Celine fumbled for the remote, switched on the television. A news anchor was mid-sentence. Stunning development in the federal investigation into the Duvall crime organization. Roman Duvall, heir to the empire, has entered into a cooperation agreement with prosecutors, agreeing to testify against former associates in exchange for immunity. The screen cut to footage of Roman leaving a courthouse surrounded by federal agents. He looked exhausted, haunted, but resolute. The anchor continued. Sources say Duvall's testimony could dismantle one of the East Coast's most powerful criminal networks. In a related development, the Hartwell Community Healthcare Foundation, funded by Duvall, has been cleared of any criminal investigation after a thorough audit revealed all assets originated from legitimate sources. Celine sat down hard on her couch. He'd done it, actually done it. Traded his safety for hers. Her phone rang. Luca. Did you see? Yeah, I saw. He's a dead man, Celine, the people he's testifying against. They don't forgive. They don't forget. He just signed his own death warrant. I know. You need to call him. Talk him out of this. It's already done. The cooperation agreement is signed. Then you need to, I don't know. Something, because Roman did this for you. He burned every bridge he had left to protect your foundation. That has to mean something. Celine closed her eyes. It means he's still making decisions for me instead of with me. Or it means he's finally fighting for what he actually wants. Isn't that what you asked him to do? The words landed like a punch. Celine had wanted Roman to fight for her, to choose courage over fear, to burn his life down if that's what it took to prove he was different. He'd just done exactly that, and she'd hung up on him. She grabbed her keys and ran. The address Roman had given her weeks ago was a condo in downtown Portland. High-rise building, doorman, the kind of expensive anonymity that money could buy. Celine talked her way past security, took the elevator to the 14th floor and pounded on his door. Roman opened it, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes widened when he saw her. Celine. She grabbed his shirt and pulled him into a kiss. Desperate and angry and terrified. He froze for a second, then kissed her back with the intensity of someone who'd thought he'd never get the chance again. They broke apart, breathing hard. You testified, she said. I had to. You could have told me first. You told me not to call. So you just made a unilateral decision that could get you killed. Yes, you're an idiot. I know. Celine hit his chest with her fist. Not hard, just enough to make the point. You don't get to martyr yourself for me. You don't get to sacrifice yourself and call it love. Then what do you want me to call it? I want you to call me before you do something insane. I want you to let me make choices about my own life. I want you to stop deciding what's best for me and actually ask what I think. Roman caught her wrist gently. You're right. I should have called. Should have discussed it. But Celine, I couldn't let them destroy what you built. I couldn't let my past poison your future. Again, so instead you painted a target on your back. Yes. And when they come for you, when someone decides testifying against the organization means you need to die, what then? Then at least you'll be safe. The foundation will be safe. You can keep helping people without my history dragging you down. Celine felt tears burning in her eyes. You think I want that? You think I want to build something meaningful while knowing you died to make it possible? Better than the alternative. Which is what? You losing everything because you made the mistake of loving me. The raw honesty in his voice broke something in Celine. All the anger, all the resentment, all the careful distance she'd been maintaining. It crumbled. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I hate that you did this. I hate that you're right. I hate that I still love you even after everything. Roman pulled her close, held her while she cried against his chest. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it. Stop apologizing and tell me what happens now. Do you have protection? Are the feds keeping you safe? For now. There's a safe house, marshals, standard witness protection protocols until the trials are over. How long? 6 months, maybe a year. Depends on how many cases go to court, and after that I disappear. New identity, new life. Somewhere far from Boston and Portland and anyone connected to my father's world. Celine pulled back to look at him. Alone. Roman's jaw tightened. I can't ask you to come with me. That's not fair. I didn't ask if you were asking. I asked if you were planning to disappear. Alone. Celine answered the question. He searched her face. I don't know. I haven't thought past surviving the next 6 months. Then think about it now. If you make it through this, if you actually testify and survive and get to start over somewhere new, do you want me there? More than anything. Then ask me. I can't. You deserve better than Roman. Ask me. He took a shaky breath. Come with me when this is over. Start over somewhere no one knows us. Build a life that's actually ours instead of something we're stealing between disasters. Celine should have said no. Should have protected herself. Should have recognized this as the same pattern that had destroyed them before. Roman making impossible promises while standing in the wreckage of his choices. But this time felt different. This time he wasn't asking her to wait in a safe house while he married someone else. He was asking her to run towards something instead of away from it. Okay, she heard herself say. Roman stared at her. Okay, but with conditions. Anything. First, you stop making decisions without me. We're partners or we're nothing. Second, you let me help. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you testify against criminals. I'm coming to the trials, supporting you, making sure you don't disappear into some federal protection program without me. Third, her voice wavered. Third, you promise me that if this goes wrong, if they come for you anyway, you fight. You don't just accept it as penance for your past. You fight to stay alive because I need you alive. I promise. Say it all. I promise to include you in decisions. I promise to let you help. I promise to fight to stay alive. Roman cupped her face in his hands. I promise to become someone worthy of the faith you're putting in me. You better. Because if you die on me after all this, I'm going to find a way to bring you back just so I can kill you myself. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was startled and genuine and made Celine realize how little joy had existed in their relationship until now. It had all been intensity and passion and desperate stolen moments. Maybe this time they could have something different. They kissed again. Slower this time. Less desperation. More intention. Like sealing a deal. Like making a promise that actually had a chance of being kept. When they finally broke apart, Celine rested her forehead against his. When do you have to go to the safe house? Tomorrow morning. Then we have tonight. They spend it talking. Really talking. Not dancing around the painful parts, but diving into them head first. Roman told her everything about his father's organization, the operations, the violence, the things he'd done before he met her that he'd never be able to take back. Celine told him about the months after she left Boston, the depression, the anger, the slow process of rebuilding herself into someone who didn't need rescuing. They didn't make love, didn't sleep, just sat on his couch as night bled into dawn, building the foundation of honesty their relationship should have had from the beginning. When the federal agents knocked on the door at 6 a.m., Celine was ready. She watched Roman grab a go-bag he'd already packed, watched him take one last look around the condo that had been his home for the past few months, watched him square his shoulders and prepare to walk into a life that might get him killed. At the door, he turned back to her. I love you, he said. I know I've said it before when it didn't mean enough, but I'm saying it now and I mean it means everything. I love you too. Don't die. I'll do my best. Then he was gone, out the door with federal agents flanking him, disappearing into witness protection, while Celine stood in his empty apartment trying to breathe around the fear crushing her chest. 6 months. Maybe a year. That's how long she had to wait. That's how long Roman had to survive. Celine walked to the window and watched the black SUV pull away, carrying the man she loved toward trials that would either free them both or destroy them completely. No middle ground, No safe option. Just all or nothing. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and whispered into the empty room. Come back to me. The city stretched out below, indifferent and eternal. Portland had witnessed her arrival broken and alone, had watched her rebuild herself into something stronger. Now it would witness whether that strength was enough to survive loving someone whose past was determined to kill him. Celine turned away from the window and called Ivy. I need your help, she said when Ivy picked up. What's wrong? Roman is in witness protection, testifying against his father's entire organization. The trials start in 2 months. Jesus, Celine, are you okay? No. But I'm going to be, because I'm not losing him again, not like this. She grabbed her jacket, headed for the door. I need you to help me prepare because when those trials happen, I'm going to be there. And I need to know how to survive in that world. You're serious, completely. Ivy was quiet for a moment. Okay, I'll help. But Celine, if you're doing this, you need to understand something. The people Roman is testifying against, they don't play by rules. If they figure out you matter to him, they'll use you, hurt you, kill you if they think it'll shut him up. I know, and you're still doing this. I'm still doing this. Then I guess I'm in too. What do you need? Celine stepped out into the early morning Portland rain, feeling it soak through her clothes, feeling alive for the first time since watching Roman get into that SUV. Everything, she said. I need to know everything about how to survive a war. Because that's what this was. A war between Roman's past and their potential future. And Celine was done watching from the sidelines. She was going to fight, and she was going to win or die trying. The rain fell harder, washing over Portland like baptism or burial. Celine walked through it with her phone pressed to her ear and her mind already calculating strategy, preparing for the battles ahead. 6 months until the trials. 6 months to prepare. 6 months to become someone who could stand beside Roman Duvall in front of the most dangerous people on the East Coast and not flinch. She'd been a nurse, then a survivor, then a builder. Now she needed to become a warrior. The woman who'd fallen in love with a crime lord in a Boston ER was gone, burned away by betrayal and heartbreak. What rose from those ashes was someone harder, someone who'd looked at impossible odds and decided to fight anyway, someone who understood that love without courage was meaningless. And Celine Vale had finally found her courage. Now she just had to survive long enough to use it. The first trial began on a Tuesday morning in October, when the leaves were turning colors Celine had never seen in Boston. She sat in the federal courthouse gallery, wearing a navy suit Ivy had helped her pick out. Her hair pulled back, her face composed in a mask of calm she didn't feel. Roman entered through a side door flanked by U.S. Marshals. He'd lost weight during his months in witness protection. His suit hung differently on his frame, his face all sharp angles and shadows. But when his eyes found hers across the courtroom, something in his expression softened. She nodded once. Just enough to say, I'm here. I'm not leaving. The prosecution's case was methodical and brutal. They laid out decades of Damien Duvall's operations, the extortion, the violence, the bodies that had never been found. And Roman sat in the witness box day after day, confirming it all, providing details only someone inside the organization could know, destroying the legacy his father had built and everyone who'd helped maintain it. The defense attorneys tried to break him, accused him of lying to save himself, painted him as a coward turning on his own people for immunity. Roman took it all without flinching, his voice steady as he recounted crimes he'd witnessed, participated in, enabled through his silence. Celine watched him transform testimony by testimony, watched him strip away the last vestiges of the man who'd once believed family loyalty meant protecting monsters, watched him choose truth over comfort for the first time in his life. On the 4th day, during a recess, a man in an expensive suit approached Celine in the courthouse cafeteria. Miss Vale, I wonder if we might have a word. She looked up from her coffee. The man was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of face that had learned to hide everything dangerous behind pleasant neutrality. Who are you? Victor Laurent, Celeste's father. He sat down across from her, without waiting for an invitation. I wanted to meet the woman who inspired Roman Duvall to destroy everything his father built. Celine's hand tightened around her coffee cup. I didn't inspire anything. Roman made his own choices, did he? Or did you simply represent an escape from a life he'd always hated? A convenient excuse to blow up an empire he never wanted to inherit? What do you want? I want you to understand the consequences of his testimony. Roman is implicating people across 6 states, people with families, people with legitimate businesses built alongside their less legitimate operations. He's not just taking down criminals, he's destroying lives. Those people destroyed lives first, and that makes it justice, or just revenge dressed up as righteousness. Victor leaned forward. My daughter loved him, in her own way. She understood what their marriage meant, a merger, a strategic alliance. She didn't expect romance, but she offered partnership, respect. A future where Roman could have maintained the empire while living however he wanted in private. He didn't want that future. He wanted you. There's a difference. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. And now he's burning everything down for the possibility of a life with a woman who might not even survive what comes next. Is that a threat? It's an observation. The people Roman is testifying against have long memories and resources you can't imagine. You think federal protection lasts forever. You think they'll stop looking for him. For you. Celine met his eyes without blinking. Let them look. Brave words. But bravery doesn't stop bullets. It doesn't prevent car accidents. It doesn't save you when someone decides you're more valuable as leverage than as a person. If you're trying to scare me into leaving, you're wasting your time. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to save you. Walk away now. Let Roman finish this alone. Disappear back to your clinic in Portland and build your safe little life. Because if you stay, you become a target, and eventually someone will use you to get to him. He'd never cooperate. He'd never betray his principles to save you. Victor laughed quietly. Miss Vale, that's exactly what he'd do. That's what he's always done. Roman Duvall is a man who sacrifices everything for the people he loves. It's his greatest weakness. And if you stay in his life, someone will exploit that weakness until there's nothing left of either of you. He stood up, adjusted his suit jacket. Think about it. You have until the trial ends to make a different choice. After that, the invitations to walk away peacefully expire. Victor left. Celine sat alone in the cafeteria, coffee gone cold in her hands, trying to control the fear crawling up her spine. She didn't tell Roman about the conversation. Didn't want to give him another reason to sacrifice himself. Instead, she showed up every day, sat in the gallery, and became a constant presence the defense attorneys learned to hate. Because Roman's eyes found her whenever the questioning got brutal. And he drew strength from seeing her there. The first trial ended with guilty verdicts across the board. 3 of Damien's top associates going to prison for 20 years minimum. The second trial started 2 weeks later. Then the third. Roman testified in all of them, his voice growing hoarser, his face more drawn, but his resolve never wavering. 4 months into the process, Ivy pulled Celine aside after a court session. You're being followed, Ivy said quietly. Don't turn around. Black sedan. 2 men. They've been tailing you for 3 days. Celine's blood went cold. Did you? I called the marshals. They're aware. But Celine, this is getting dangerous. Maybe Victor was right. Maybe you should. I'm not leaving. Even if staying gets you killed. Even then. Ivy grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. I love you. You're my best friend. But I'm watching you destroy yourself for a man who's already cost you everything. How much more are you willing to lose? As much as it takes. That's not romantic. That's suicidal. Maybe. But it's my choice. Mine. Not Roman's. Not Victor Laurent's. Not anyone else's. Celine pulled free gently. I spent 6 months in Portland building a life that mattered. And it did matter. It still matters. But it wasn't complete. Because I was running instead of fighting. I'm done running. The surveillance continued. Celine reported it. The marshals investigated. Nothing came of it except the constant awareness of being watched, being assessed, being marked as a potential weakness in Roman's armor. She started varying her routes, checking for tails, sleeping with her phone next to the bed, and pepper spray in her bag, living like prey while trying to maintain the appearance of someone unfazed by danger. It was exhausting. 6 months after the trials began, Roman was finally released from the safe house. The major cases were concluded. Guilty verdicts across the board, dozens of arrests, the dismantling of one of the East Coast's most powerful criminal networks, and Roman Duvall, the man who'd made it all possible, was free. They met in a park in Seattle, neutral territory, public space, marshals watching from a discreet distance. Roman looked better than he had during the trials, still too thin, still carrying weight that would probably never fully lift, but alive, present, real. Celine ran to him. He caught her, held her like she might disappear if he let go. "It's over," he said into her hair. "It's finally over." Not quite, she pulled back to look at him. "Victor Laurent approached me during the first trial. He said people would come after us, that we'd never be safe. He's probably right. I don't care." "You should." "Celine, the deal I made with the feds includes witness protection for both of us if we want it. New identities, new lives. Somewhere far away from anyone connected to my father's world. And if we don't want it, then we take our chances, live openly. Hope that enough people went to prison that the ones still free decide we're not worth the risk." Roman cupped her face in his hands. "I'm not making this decision for you. I'm asking what you want." Celine thought about the clinic, about the foundation, about Marcus and the patients and the life she'd built in Portland that actually mattered. Then she thought about Victor's threat, about the surveillance, about living every day wondering if this would be the day someone decided she was leverage worth using. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want to wake up next to you without wondering if someone's going to try to kill us. I want to build something normal, boring, safe. I want all the things I never thought I could have." "Where?" "Somewhere small. Somewhere no one knows the name Duvall. Somewhere we can just be people instead of targets." Celine closed her eyes, feeling the future split into two paths. One where she held on to Portland and the clinic and everything she'd built. One where she let it go and gambled on building something new with Roman. "Okay," she said, "let's disappear." The federal program set them up in a town in Colorado. Small mountain community, population 8,000, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone but minded their own business about where people came from. Roman became Ryan Miller. Celine became Sarah Miller. They had wedding rings and a cover story about moving from the Midwest for his health. No one asked too many questions. They rented a small house on the edge of town with views of mountains that turned purple at sunset. Roman got a job doing carpentry, something he'd learned from his grandfather before Damien had pulled him into the family business. Celine started working at the local community health center. Her nursing skills needed immediately in a town that had more need than resources. For 3 months, they lived like normal people, woke up together, made breakfast, went to work, came home, cooked dinner, watched television, made love without the weight of empires and betrayals crushing them. It was the most ordinary life Celine had ever lived. It was perfect. Then one Tuesday afternoon in March, a man walked into the health center asking for Sarah Miller. Celine looked up from charting and felt her blood turn to ice. The man was young, maybe 30, with a professional haircut and a pleasant smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a lawyer or an accountant or any of a dozen harmless professions, but Celine recognized a predator when she saw one. "I'm Sarah," she said carefully. "What can I do for you? I have a message from an old friend. He wanted me to tell you that he knows where you are, and he knows about your husband's new name, and he wanted you to know that he's willing to forget all of it for the right price." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't, but Ryan will. Tell him Victor Laurent sends his regards, and tell him he has 1 week to decide if he wants to pay for his piece, or if he'd rather we handle this the old-fashioned way." The man left. Celine stood frozen in the clinic, hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. They'd been found. After 6 months of careful living, of new identities, and federal protection, Victor Laurent had found them anyway. She called Roman. He came immediately, walked into the health center looking calm, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Tell me exactly what he said." Celine repeated the conversation word for word. Roman's jaw tightened. "How much does he want?" "He didn't say. Just that you'd know the price." Roman pulled out his phone, stepped outside. Celine watched through the window as he made a call, his face unreadable. When he came back inside, he looked 10 years older. "Victor wants $2 million, payment for his silence and guarantee that he'll keep our location quiet from everyone else looking. That's extortion. That's survival. I pay him or we run again. New town, new names, new lives, until someone else finds us, and we do it all over. We can't live like that. I know. Roman sat down heavily in one of the waiting room chairs. I thought testifying would be enough. I thought destroying the organization would mean we could finally be free. But Victor's right. There's always someone left. Always someone who wants revenge or money or just to hurt people because that's all they know how to do. Celine sat down next to him. So what do we do? I don't know. I can pay him. I still have money from the liquidation. 2 million won't bankrupt us. But it sets a precedent. And once people know we'll pay, they'll keep coming back. Then we don't pay. Then he tells people where we are. And someone who wants me dead more than they want money will come finish what the trials started. They sat in silence, the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the impossible situation they'd landed in. What if we go to the marshals? Celine asked. Tell them we've been found. Get relocated again. They'll move us. But they can't guarantee it won't happen again. Victor found us once. He'll find us again. And eventually we'll run out of places to hide. So we're trapped. We can pay forever or run forever or die. Yeah, those are the options. Celine felt something inside her shift. All this time she'd thought surviving meant escaping. Thought safety meant distance. But sitting in a health center in Colorado, while someone demanded payment for the privilege of being left alone, she realized the truth. There was no escaping Roman's past. It would follow them forever. Not because they deserved it, but because that's how that world worked. Once you were in, you were in. Even testifying, even cooperating, even destroying the entire organization didn't buy you freedom. It just bought you time. I'm tired, Celine said quietly. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being afraid. So am I. Then let's stop. Roman looked at her. What are you saying? I'm saying we pay Victor. We pay him and we stay here and we build our life anyway. And if someone else comes looking, we deal with it then. But I'm not running anymore. I'm not giving up this place, this life, this version of us, just because someone found us. We earned this. We fought for it. I'm not surrendering it without a fight. You're talking about living with a target on your back. I've had a target on my back since the night I stitched you up in Boston. At least now I'm choosing to keep it there instead of having it forced on me. Roman studied her face, looking for doubt, for fear. Celine looked back steadily. Are you sure? He asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Something that looked like relief crossed his expression. Okay, we pay Victor. We stay here. We take our chances. Together. Roman made the call, arranged the payment. $2 million transferred to an offshore account in exchange for Victor's silence, and his promise to redirect anyone else who came looking. It was a promise worth exactly nothing, but it bought them time. And time was all they'd ever really had anyway. 6 months later, Celine stood outside a building in downtown Glenwood Springs, looking up at the sign she'd just had installed. Hartwell Community Clinic, serving all who need care. The foundation money from Portland had followed her here, restructured and refined. This clinic was smaller than what she'd built in Oregon, but it served a community with even greater need. Rural Colorado had plenty of people who couldn't afford health care, who fell through the cracks of the system, who needed someone to care about them beyond their ability to pay. Celine had become that someone. Roman walked up behind her, slid an arm around her waist. It looks good, he said. It looks real. It is real. You made it real. She leaned back against him, watching people walk past their clinic. Some of them would become patients. Some would spread the word. Some would just be grateful that someone cared enough to try. Do you ever regret it? Celine asked, testifying, walking away. All of it. Every day. She turned to look at him. Really, I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my father built something so poisonous it destroyed everyone who touched it. I regret the years I wasted being afraid to leave. Roman's expression was serious. But I don't regret choosing you. I don't regret fighting to become someone worth choosing. Even if it meant losing everything else. We didn't lose everything. We're still here. We are. Against pretty impressive odds. Celine thought about those odds. About Victor's threats and surveillance, and the constant awareness that safety was temporary and peace was something you fought for daily, instead of something you achieved permanently. Do you think it'll ever really be over? She asked. No. I think we'll always be looking over our shoulders. I think there will always be someone out there who wants revenge or money or just to hurt us because they can. But I also think we can build a life worth protecting anyway. This clinic, this town, each other, that's real too. Maybe more real than the danger because we chose it knowing the cost. Was right, they'd chosen this. Not blindly, not naively, but with full knowledge of what it meant. And it meant living with fear but not letting fear win. It meant building something meaningful while accepting it could be taken away. It meant loving someone, despite knowing love made you vulnerable. It meant being human in the fullest, most complicated sense. Celine reached up and kissed Roman, her husband, her partner, the man who destroyed her and rebuilt her, and was still standing beside her after everything. "Let's go home," she said. They walked back to their small house on the edge of town, hand in hand. Neither of them looking back to check if they were being followed, because, at some point, you had to choose trust over paranoia, or you stopped living and just survived. That evening, they sat on their back porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, drinking cheap beer, and talking about the clinic's first week. Celine had treated a diabetic rancher, a kid with a broken arm, 3 cases of strep throat, and an elderly woman who just needed someone to check her blood pressure and tell her she was going to be okay. Normal medicine, normal problems, normal life. It felt like victory. Roman's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then showed Celine the screen. A text from Luca. "Heard through the grapevine, you're doing well. Good for you. Stay safe." "He's still checking on us," Celine said. "Some people can't help being loyal even after the thing they were loyal to is gone." "Is that what you were? Loyal? For too long? Then I figured out loyalty to something rotten just makes you rotten too. Better to be loyal to people who actually deserve it." He took her hand. Celine laced their fingers together, feeling the calluses from his carpentry work, the strength in his grip, the absolute certainty of his presence. This was real, this moment, this life, these choices. Everything else, Boston, the trials, the surveillance, the threats, was background noise. Important background noise that shaped who they'd become, but not the whole story. The whole story was 2 people learning to choose each other every day. Learning to build something meaningful from the wreckage of what they'd destroyed. Learning that redemption wasn't a destination, but a practice. Something you did daily, instead of something you achieved once and claimed forever. "I love you," Celine said into the gathering darkness. "I love you too. For whatever that's worth. It's worth everything. It always was. We just had to become brave enough to believe it." Roman pulled her closer. They sat together as night fell over Colorado. 2 people who'd survived impossible odds and come out the other side, changed but unbroken. The next morning, Celine woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and Roman already up, making coffee in the kitchen. She could hear him humming something off-key while he worked. She lay there for a moment, just listening, letting herself feel the ordinary beauty of it. No gunshots, no threats, no federal agents, no empire crashing down around them. Just a man making coffee in a small house in Colorado. Just a woman who'd fought her way through hell to get here. Just life. Normal, complicated, beautiful life. Celine got up, pulled on Roman's discarded shirt from the night before, and walked into the kitchen. He turned when he heard her, smiled that small private smile he saved just for her. "Morning," he said. "Morning." He handed her a cup of coffee, made exactly how she liked it. Too much cream, 2 sugars. She took it and stood next to him at the counter, both of them looking out the kitchen window at mountains that would never stop being beautiful. "You ready for today?" he asked. The clinic was hosting a community health fair. Free screenings, vaccinations, basic care for anyone who walked through the door. Celine had been planning it for weeks, ready as I'll ever be. "You're going to change lives today. You know that, right? Maybe. Or maybe I'll just help a few people feel a little less alone in their struggles. That's enough." Roman kissed her temple. "That's more than enough. That's everything." They finished their coffee, got dressed, drove into town together in the used truck Roman had bought last month. Everything was secondhand here. Everything was modest. They lived on a budget that would have seemed impossible in their old lives, and it was perfect. The health fair was chaos in the best possible way. Hundreds of people showed up. Families with kids, elderly folks who hadn't seen a doctor in years, workers who couldn't afford to miss shifts for regular appointments. Celine moved through the crowd with her staff, 3 nurses, and a part-time physician's assistant she'd hired with foundation money, treating people, answering questions, just being present for a community that desperately needed someone to care. Roman worked the registration table, checking people in, making sure everyone felt welcome. He was good at it. Good at talking to people without the weight of his past crushing every interaction. Good at being Ryan Miller, carpenter and community volunteer instead of Roman Duvall, crime heir and federal witness. Around noon, a little girl approached Celine while she was taking a woman's blood pressure. "Are you the doctor?" "I'm a nurse, but I can help you." "What's wrong?" "My brother's asthma is bad." "We don't have medicine." Celine's heart clenched. She finished with her current patient, then followed the girl to where her mother stood holding a boy of maybe 7 who was wheezing badly. "How long has he been like this?" Celine asked. 3 days. "We ran out of his inhaler last month. Can't afford to refill it." Celine got them into an exam room, assessed the boy, confirmed he needed immediate treatment. The clinic kept emergency medications for exactly this situation. She gave the kid an albuterol treatment, watched his breathing ease, then sent them home with a new inhaler and instructions to come back if it got worse. "How much do we owe you?" the mother asked. "Nothing. That's what we're here for." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. You don't know what this means." But Celine did know. She knew exactly what it meant to need help and have someone actually provide it without judgment or payment demands or conditions. She knew because she'd been on the other side, had been the one needing rescue, had been the one desperate for someone to care. Now she was the one caring. And it mattered more than anything she'd ever done. The health fair ran until 8 p.m. By the time they closed up, Celine was exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. They'd seen over 300 people, had identified dozens of serious health issues, had made a genuine difference in their community. Roman drove them home in comfortable silence. When they got to the house, he built a fire in the fireplace while Celine made simple dinner. Pasta and salad, nothing fancy. They ate on the couch with plates balanced on their knees, too tired to bother with the table. "I'm proud of you," Roman said. "What you did today, what you do every day, it matters. So does what you do, building things, creating instead of destroying. It's not the same. Why not? You're helping people build homes, build lives, that matters too." Roman set down his plate, stared into the fire. "I spent 33 years being my father's son, 6 months testifying against everything he built, and now I'm a carpenter in Colorado, trying to pretend the first 33 years didn't happen. Sometimes I wonder if that's growth or just cowardice with better packaging." Celine put her own plate aside, moved closer to him. "You want to know what I think? Always. I think you're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. Not to erase the past, but to build a future that actually belongs to you." She took his hand. "You're not pretending those years didn't happen. You're refusing to let them define your whole life. There's a difference, is there? Yes. Because the man I met in Boston was drowning. The man you are now is learning to swim. That's not cowardice. That's survival. And survival is the bravest thing anyone can choose." Roman pulled her into his arms, held her close enough that she could feel his heartbeat against her cheek. "How did I get this lucky?" he whispered. "You didn't. We both got lucky. We found each other in the worst possible circumstances and somehow didn't destroy each other completely. That's not luck. That's miracle adjacent." He laughed. The sound was warm and genuine, and everything Celine had fought for. They sat by the fire until it burned down to embers, then went to bed and made love slowly, carefully, like people who understood how fragile happiness could be and were determined to honor it anyway. Afterward, lying tangled together in the dark, Celine thought about the journey that had brought them here, the safe house where she'd watched Roman marry someone else, the bus ride to Portland, the clinic she'd built, the foundation, the trials, the threats, the choices that had seemed impossible until she'd made them anyway. Every moment had led to this one, this bed, this man, this life. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything. "Roman," she whispered into the darkness. "Yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For becoming someone worth believing in. It would have been easier to stay broken. But you didn't. You fought, and it mattered." He kissed her forehead. We both fought, and we both won. Did we? We're here, aren't we? Alive. Together. Building something that matters, that's winning. Everything else is just noise. Celine closed her eyes and let herself believe it. Let herself accept that sometimes the happy ending wasn't perfection. It was just two imperfect people choosing each other, despite knowing exactly how badly they could hurt each other. It was building a life worth protecting, while accepting that protection was never guaranteed. It was loving someone knowing love made you vulnerable, but doing it anyway, because the alternative was dying inside while still breathing. 3 years later, Celine stood in front of a crowd at the town community center, accepting an award for the clinic's work, serving underserved populations. The mayor was speaking, but she wasn't really listening. She was watching Roman in the audience. He looked different now, older, more settled, like he'd finally grown into his own skin. Next to him sat Ivy, who'd moved to Colorado 6 months ago because she decided she was tired of Boston winters and wanted to be closer to her best friend. Next to Ivy sat Marcus, who'd retired from the Portland clinic and was consulting with Celine on expanding the Colorado operation. Family, not blood family, chosen family. People who'd stood by them through everything. The mayor handed her a plaque. Celine accepted it, said a few words about community and service, and the importance of caring for each other. Standard speech, heartfelt, but not particularly original. What mattered was afterward when Roman pulled her aside and whispered, "I'm proud of you every day for everything you've built." "We've built," she corrected. "This isn't just mine, it's ours. I swing hammers and donate money, you save lives. You saved mine, that counts. You saved mine first. In a Boston ER, when I was bleeding out and too stubborn for anesthesia." Celine smiled at the memory. It felt like a lifetime ago, like a story about different people. Maybe it was. "You want to know something," she said. "What?" "I wouldn't change it, any of it, even the parts that almost destroyed us, because they led here. And here is exactly where I want to be." Roman's eyes were bright. "You mean that?" Every word. He kissed her there in front of everyone. The mayor, the town council, their friends, their community. A kiss that said, "You're mine and I'm yours." And we survived and we're still standing. And that's the whole story. When they finally pulled apart, the crowd was applauding, not for the kiss, but for the clinic, for the work, for the difference they were making. But Celine heard it differently, heard it as applause for survival, for choosing love over fear, for becoming people who built instead of destroyed. That night, lying in bed in their small houses, Roman's hand resting on her stomach, Celine thought about the future for the first time in years without fear. "What are you thinking about?" Roman asked. "What we've built, what we might build next." "Like what?" "Like maybe expanding the clinic into surrounding counties. Like maybe training community health workers. Like maybe," she paused, "like maybe starting a family." Roman went very still. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm thinking about it. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. If we're ready." "Are we ready?" "I don't know. Are you?" Roman was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I never thought I'd get to have this. A normal life. A future that wasn't predetermined. The possibility of a family that wasn't built on violence and fear. But yes. Yes, I want that. With you, if you want it too." Celine turned to face him in the darkness. "I want it. I want all of it. The messy, complicated, terrifying, beautiful, all of it. Then let's do it. Let's build that too." They fell asleep holding each other, dreaming of futures that felt possible for the first time in their lives. 6 months later, Celine discovered she was pregnant. The news hit her like joy and terror in equal measure. She sat in the clinic bathroom, staring at the positive test, trying to process what it meant. A baby. Their baby. A whole human they'd be responsible for creating, raising, protecting. She thought about Victor Laurent's threats, about the surveillance that had followed them to Colorado, about the fact that danger could return at any moment. Then she thought about the clinic, about the community, about the life they'd built, despite all the reasons it should have been impossible, and she chose hope over fear. That evening, she told Roman, he cried, actually cried, tears streaming down his face while he held her, and whispered thank you over and over, like she'd given him something miraculous, instead of just biology doing what biology did. "We're having a baby," he kept saying. "We're actually having a baby." Are you happy? I'm terrified. I'm ecstatic. I'm everything at once. He pulled back to look at her. Are you happy? I'm all of that too, and I'm okay with it. With all of it. They told Ivy first, then Marcus, then gradually their community. Everyone celebrated like it was their own good news instead of something private and personal, because that's what community meant. Shared joy, shared struggle, shared life. Celine's pregnancy was uneventful, medically but emotionally complex. Every doctor's appointment reminded her of Boston, of the hospital where she'd met Roman, of the life she'd left behind. Every kick reminded her that she was bringing a child into a world that still held danger, that still had people who might want to hurt them. But Roman was there for all of it. Every appointment, every moment of doubt, every surge of fear. He held her hand and reminded her that they'd survived worse, that they'd keep surviving, that their child would be born into love and protection and community. 8 months into her pregnancy, Victor Laurent died. Heart attack. Sudden. No warning. The news reached them through Luca, who still checked in occasionally despite having left that world himself years ago. Thought you should know, Luca's text said. Victor is gone. Natural causes. Celeste has taken over the Laurent operations, but word is she's not interested in old grudges. You might finally be free. Celine showed Roman the message. They sat together processing what it meant. Do you think it's really over? She asked. I think Victor was the last person with enough resources and motivation to keep hunting us. With him gone, we're just old news. Yesterday's scandal. So we're free. Maybe. Or maybe we've just bought more time. I'll take it either way. 2 weeks later, Celine went into labor. Roman drove her to the regional hospital, hands shaking on the steering wheel, looking more terrified than she'd ever seen him during any of the trials. You're supposed to be the calm one, she said through a contraction. I am calm. You're white as a sheet and sweating through your shirt. Calm, sweating, it's a thing. Despite everything, the pain, the fear, the absolute chaos of bringing new life into the world, Celine laughed. Their daughter was born at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. 6 pounds, 8 ounces, perfect in every way that mattered, and several that didn't. They named her Hope. Not because they were naive enough to think hope solved everything, but because hope was what had kept them alive when giving up would have been easier. Hope was what had made them fight for each other. Hope was what had brought them here, to this moment, to this new life they'd created together. Roman held his daughter for the first time, and Celine watched him transform, watched the last shadows of Roman Duvall's legacy fade from his face, watched him become purely, completely himself. Hi, Hope, he whispered. I'm your dad, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to be afraid the way I was. I promise. Celine watched them, her husband and her daughter, and felt something settle deep in her chest. All the fear, all the doubt, all the what-ifs that had haunted her since Boston. They were still there, would probably always be there, but they no longer defined her. What defined her now was this family, this choice, this life built from the ruins of everything they'd destroyed. 5 years after that, Celine stood in front of a much larger building with a much larger sign. Hartwell Regional Healthcare Network. They'd expanded. 4 clinics now across rural Colorado, 50 staff members, thousands of patients served annually. A model program that other states were starting to replicate. Roman stood next to her, Hope balanced on his hip, their son James, 3 years old and already showing signs of his father's stubborn determination, holding Celine's hand. You did it, Roman said quietly. You actually did it. We did it. All of us. I mostly just funded it and built some shelving. You built a family. You built a life. You built yourself into someone completely different from who you were supposed to become. That's the real miracle here. Roman looked down at their children, then back at Celine. You know what the wildest part is? What? I'm happy. Genuinely uncomplicated happy. I didn't think people like me got to have that. People like you. People who come from darkness, who spent years enabling terrible things, who have blood on their hands that never really washes clean. Celine took his free hand, laced their fingers together. People like you get to have happiness if they fight for it, if they do the work, if they choose to become someone different. You did all of that. You earned this. We earned it. Yeah, we did. They walked into the building together, their children chattering about the day ahead, their future stretching out bright and uncertain and entirely their own. That evening after the kids were asleep, Roman and Celine sat on their back porch, watching stars emerge over the mountains. They'd moved to a bigger house last year, still modest, still within their means, but with room for their growing family. "Do you ever think about Boston?" Roman asked. "Sometimes. Mostly about the hospital. The work I did there. Do you miss it?" "I miss the intensity, the adrenaline, the feeling that every shift was life or death." She sipped her wine. "But I don't miss what it cost me. The exhaustion, the emotional toll, the sense that I was just treading water instead of building something lasting. And now I'm building something that will outlive me. Something that will help people long after I'm gone. That matters more than any single dramatic save." Roman nodded. They sat in comfortable silence until he spoke again. "I got a letter today from the federal prosecutor who handled my case." Celine turned to look at him. "What did it say?" "That the last of the people I testified against was sentenced. That the organization is completely dismantled. That I'm officially released from all cooperation requirements." He pulled an envelope from his pocket, and that they wanted to thank me for my service to justice. "How do you feel about that?" "Weird. Hollow. I destroyed my father's empire to save us. Service to justice was just a side effect. Does the motivation matter if the result was good? I don't know. Do good results from selfish reasons count as actual good?" Celine considered. "I think good is good regardless of where it comes from. You dismantled a criminal network. Dozens of dangerous people are in prison. Countless future victims were saved. That's good. It's good even if you did it to protect me instead of out of some noble desire for justice." "You really believe that?" "I do. Because I think most good things in the world come from mixed motivations. People help each other because it feels good, not just because it's right. Parents protect their children out of love, not abstract ethics. Good is good. We can accept that without needing it to be pure." Roman pulled her closer. "When did you get so wise?" "Somewhere between watching you marry someone else on television and building a healthcare network in Colorado. The exact moment is fuzzy." He laughed, that beautiful, genuine laugh that still made Celine's heart skip. "I love you," he said. "More now than in Boston. More than yesterday. More than I thought was possible. I love you too, all the broken parts. All the healed parts. All the parts still healing." They stayed outside until the cold drove them in. Then went to bed wrapped around each other the way they'd slept for years now. Safe. Secure. Home. 10 years after the trials, Celine received an invitation to speak at a national healthcare conference about building sustainable care models in underserved communities. The Hartwell Network had become a case study, a template, proof that with enough funding and dedication, healthcare could actually reach people who needed it most. She almost didn't go. Public speaking still made her nervous, and the conference was in Boston. But Roman encouraged her. "You've been avoiding that city for over a decade," he said. "Maybe it's time to go back. Face it. Show yourself how much you've changed." So she went. The conference center was in downtown Boston, nowhere near the hospital where she'd worked, but close enough that the city felt familiar. The accent, the pace, the aggressive way people drove. She'd forgotten how much she'd hated Boston winters. Her presentation went well. People ask intelligent questions. Several organizations wanted to partner with the Hartwell Network. She exchanged business cards and made connections that would help expand their reach. Afterward, she took a walk, found herself heading toward the hospital despite having no intention of going there. Muscle memory pulling her toward familiar territory. The building looked the same, different sign, updated exterior, but fundamentally unchanged. Celine stood across the street, watching nurses and doctors and patients flow in and out, and tried to reconcile the person she'd been then with who she was now. That Celine had been good at her job, dedicated, competent, but she'd been surviving instead of thriving, going through motions instead of building towards something. This Celine had built an empire, not a criminal one, a healing one, an empire of care. She turned to walk away and nearly collided with someone, Celine. She looked up into a familiar face. Dr. Reeves, her old attending, older now, grayer, but unmistakably him. Dr. Reeves, "Hi, I thought that was you. What are you doing in Boston?" "Healthcare conference. I'm running a clinic network in Colorado now." "I heard about that. The Hartwell Network. Impressive work. He studied her. You look good. Happy I am. Both of those things, I'm glad. You left so suddenly back then. We worried. Celine thought about that night. The ER Roman bleeding on her table. The beginning of everything that had brought her here. I needed to leave, she said simply. Fair enough. Well, if you ever want to come back, we'd be lucky to have you. Thank you, but I'm where I belong now. They said goodbye. Celine walked away from the hospital, from Boston, from the life she'd left behind. She flew home the next day. Roman picked her up at the airport with both kids. Hope, now 10, threw herself into Celine's arms while James, 8, hung back with practiced cool that didn't quite hide his excitement. How was Boston? Roman asked. Exactly the same and completely different. Make sense of that for me. The city's the same. The hospital's the same. But I'm different. So different I barely recognize the person I used to be. Is that good or bad? Good. Definitely good. That version of me was just surviving. This version is actually living. They drove home through Colorado landscape that had become more familiar than anywhere else. Mountains and sky and space. So much space. At home, after the kids were in bed, Roman asked the question Celine knew was coming. Did you see it, the hospital? Yeah, stood outside, ran into my old attending. And I felt nothing, no nostalgia, no regret. Just acknowledgement that it was part of my past, but not my present. That's healthy. That's closure. Roman pulled her into his arms. They swayed together in their kitchen, no music, just the sound of their breathing and the house settling around them. We made it, Celine whispered. We actually made it. We did. Against absolutely every odd. You know what the best part is? What? We get to keep making it every day for the rest of our lives. This isn't the ending. It's just another beginning. Roman kissed her, soft and deep and full of promises they'd actually learned how to keep. Outside, the Colorado night stretched endless and dark and full of stars that had been burning long before they were born and would burn long after they were gone. But inside, in a small house on the edge of a small town, two people who'd survived impossible things held each other and chose love over fear one more time. Because that's all survival ever was. A series of choices, a series of moments where you decided to keep going, despite every reason to give up. And Celine Vale, former ER nurse, former fugitive, current healthcare executive, forever survivor, had finally learned that the bravest thing anyone could do was build a life worth fighting for, and then fight for it every single day. Not because it was easy, but because it was theirs, and that made all the difference.